Let me mute Discord. It's so good.
What's up, guys? How's everybody doing?
Hey,
Hey, let's do a quick audio check from
Hello.
everybody here. Hey,
Yes,
Chad.
yes.
Oh, wow. 57 of you. Thank you guys all for being here already. We're
it
here.
jumped right in.
We made it.
Wow.
We
are here. It looks like my when I turn my video back on, I might have messed up your overlay, so I
You
apologize
did.
for that.
You did, and that's okay. That's okay.
So today, MJ Gallagher is Blitz, and I am MJ Gallagher. Hello.
And then
Hi.
also MJ Gallagher is all of
Yes.
us combined.
I write.
I can't. I think this is like the Genova reunion, but for me, like I'm just absorbing the rest of you.
Holy shit.
Oh,
What
wow.
the hell, dude? Yo,
Yo, thank
Nyla's
you, guys.
Zella Fire.
Both of
Zella
you.
Fire.
This
Hey,
is like-
Nyla,
I appreciate those subs so much.
Can we just
Wow.
appreciate the fact that we all just snapped into like streamer mode and we're like, oh my god, thanks for the gift subs, dude. All of us at once and sync.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, that's
Wow.
that's streamer life.
That's it.
I mean,
Jesus.
almost all of us. I think Mo probably has no idea what's going on.
Yeah,
But
I'm
that's okay.
not. No, I'm not even got. I don't even have Twitch open. Like my laptop's so rubbish that like all I can see is this fucking wizardry that's going on in front of me with you changing the faces around.
Yeah, I do that. I'm
Like
sorry.
I don't even know how you're doing that.
You know, it doesn't even matter. I'm not doing it
So
well anyway.
so yeah,
Oh my god.
for everyone in the chat.
Oh my
if,
god,
if I
Complex,
don't,
thank you for the
if
gift
I don't-
sub. Thank you, everybody.
Like,
Zela Fire, Nyla, you are killing it. Yeah,
Guys are
you
so
guys are
smart,
like,
dude.
yeah, I can't even. How
so
is
so
this?
just to be clear, if I don't react to any of this, it's not that I don't care. I just can't see it.
That's
um,
okay.
That's right.
it's all good, man.
We'll take it. We'll take it in any direction. We control the
Yeah,
narrative
and-
here.
In theory, I support everything that Baby Seal gets.
In
Oh my
theory,
gosh.
I like that. I appreciate that
In,
theory.
in theory.
Hearts with the fucking
Oh
gift
my
sub.
god, you guys, and I'm sorry if I'm not saying everybody's name right. I'm busy trying to get this just apex of drip. Sir,
Oh my God.
Blitz a lot.
The
Yes.
true alpha gamer here.
Yeah, he is alpha.
You
Yeah.
all are my alpha. Anyway, thanks for the follow, by the way. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
All right, guys. So, what are we here talking about? It finally happened. June
Elden
10th,
Ring.
June 10th rolled around and Intergrade dropped. And Intergrade was not only a pretty substantial performance update for the base game Final Fantasy VII Remake, it also had the Yuffie DLC, which, in addition to being a great little side story for a beloved character that had very little or no development, or just we'll say little development in the original game, got some fun side story content, but also an extended ending to the base game of Remake, essentially. Even though it occurs at the end of Intergrade or Intermission, we get to see a new ending, and that ending, of course, is ultra controversial. So we're going to be talking about it. So it's a spoiler conversation in case you haven't seen it. I mean, this came out like 2 days ago, apparently, and so this is fresh info. So if you don't want to be spoiled, you can watch the VOD later on my YouTube channel, which you should be subscribed to, as well as my guests here. So we'll talk about what happens here in a bit, but let's go ahead and take the time to introduce everybody, and we'll start with the other person whose face I can see moving right now, and that's Blitz. Why don't you tell us who you are, what you do, and how much fun you've been having?
Oh man, I'm just a friggin' fan. I'm a fan of you guys. I'm a fan of this community, and I love being here. I'm always excited to be here for a SEAL Team 7 talk, especially with MJ Gallagher and Sleepezi tagging along, being here front and center. Honestly, man, this whole week has been insane. Like, not only was it last week, I think it was a year anniversary for me when I started streaming, that they decided to, let's release Final Fantasy 7 Remake integrated the week after that. And we just been having fun nonstop all week, man. And the intermission has just been a blast. You guys know how much I love combat. My channel's all revolving around combat and clickbaity news. But we had ourselves such a great time this week, man. I'm just excited to be here to talk about this with these fine gentlemen here.
Well, thank you for being here, and it looks like we have a hype train, which means that we're going to get a new emote soon, and I already have that one picked out. It's been designed, and it's very exciting. So thank you guys for making that happen. Really, really appreciate it. So, guys, we've heard from Blitz. Let's hear from MJ Gallagher.
Hi guys, thank you again for having me on, Babyseal. I'd just like to Blitz's sentiment there that you three are my go-to guys for YouTube content or Twitch content. So it's able to sit down with all three of you again. Recently, obviously, I've been playing Intergrade since it's come out, almost exclusively Intermission. I'm working on, for anyone who follows my content, you'll know that I do a sort of Easter eggs and compilation lore video series about Remake. So here we are, more than a year later, and I'm still in chapter 14. But there's a good sort of 11 hours of content. And as Blitz is holding up, I've also, in that time, published a book, Norse Myths That Inspired Final Fantasy VII, which last week I actually released as a hardback as well. So the hardback is an extra 40 pages of artwork and sort of behind-the-scenes content that I didn't include in the original book.
Wait, so you added DLC to your book?
Just about to launch a Kickstarter for the follow-up Greek myths that inspired Final Fantasy VII. So please keep an eye out on social media for that. But my very immediate work is a sort of mini series off the back of the compilation lore YouTube series, which is hosted on KupaCon, their channel. My current or my new series hosted on my channel, basically doing the same Intermission. So the first video in that series is due out tomorrow, possibly Monday. But it's
we're losing you a little.
Wait, throw him a phoenix down. Throw him a phoenix down.
Somebody.
MJ, it looks like we lost you a little bit. MJ is across the seas, so, what are you going to do? But we will get back when we can. I'm thinking that maybe he muted his stuff. Hey, Night Sky Prince in the chat. Welcome. Welcome.
Baby.
So,
I love that guy.
So Sleepezi, why don't you introduce
really quickly? Could you turn down MJ Gallagher because there's some popping while he fixes his audio issues? Just for the audience here.
Okay.
Just wanted to make sure that was cleared up first. Thank you for the sub. Thank you so much. Yeah, I'll do introductions while we figure this out. But yeah, so
wow.
Oh my gosh, again, Jesus. NSP, by the way, hey, Yeah, I am Sleepezi. I am Final Fantasy VII content creator, make long theory videos, and mainly have been covering everything up until the release of Intergrade. I have played Intergrade, starting a new game on the base game, and have completed Yuffie's DLC. And I don't know if anybody who isn't familiar with me, which I don't know if that's necessarily the case with you guys, since you guys are such awesome supporters and check out each one of these. I got what I wanted for in the trailer, right? I got everything I asked for in the trailer for Intermission, and having been able to play it and just be enjoying it in this way, I cannot be happier with how everything turned out. Now, I'm not saying that everybody here is going to like every aspect of the storytelling or like some of the more questionable elements. I personally think that this game has 100% sold me on everything, because the hesitation that I had before, even with Remake, this game completely proves to me that they are totally able to handle whatever comes out from their side. Like whatever I've been like, I don't know, like just going back to the first trailer for Final Fantasy VII, right? Like this remake is that they told us to not be worried about anything that was coming down the grapevine, any new changes, and they're just proving that to be 100% the case. Is that don't be worried. Things that you might not be comfortable with, we're gonna make sure that this works. And this DLC hits right on the mark for me.
All right, so that was going to be my first question is, hey guys, does this DLC hit? And thank you for that introduction, by the way. So Sleepezi, what do you think? Does this DLC hit or what?
This DLC fucking hits, dude. I cannot describe to you guys how it felt. It was surreal. Now I'm biased, and I think I'm really excited to hear what you guys have to say about it, like more so because like me and Clark have been like from the beginning, from like when we first started talking, from like when I started first making my videos and Clark started to develop his content. Like we have been talking about the compilation for like a year and a half, and we were so interested in seeing where that story would go. But there is always, and we're not clueless people, right? We're not pretending. We're not like playing ourselves. Those games are not enjoyable for a lot of people. But what we saw was potential to add to the story. That's how I've always looked at it. Is that this all can be used to make the game better. It doesn't have to all be there, but this is like a good roadmap to extra content and extra, like some interesting ideas to enhance the original. And this game, like when the trailer was announced, I was like, this is it. And then I played it and I was like, this is more than it. This is more than enough for me to like, not only from like a lore perspective, but more for just the way that the game feels. This combat is like next level. I don't talk about games like I don't talk about Final Fantasy VII in this way, but like my immediate first impression is that the combat here is insane. The story and the way that they handled, like, I'm gonna just say it, and I don't want to go into this conversation necessarily too deeply, but like Nero, dude, the boss fight, the soundtrack, his presentation, you took something that people saw was garbage and you turned it into gold. And I love seeing that effort. I love seeing that payoff. I love all of it. There's some little nitpicky things I still have, but as far as like the bad outweighing the good, that's not even remotely the case. That's not even remotely the case for me. So I'm just excited that I'm now like coming from this place of just loving the game in its entirety. And I just want to sit here with you guys and just like talk about whatever. It's the combat, the background lore, whatever it is. I'm all for it because I just loved every aspect of this game. So, and it's just DLC.
Yeah. Yeah, it is DLC, and
I know it's crazy.
I know, and the thing about you know, I know that it's kind of a DLC that's a little late. I've heard some people that are like, well, you know, it came out almost a year after the game, and it's console locked. But I can tell you for you know, for a $20 DLC, that it's very beefy. Not just in terms of like content, but like it really gave us a taste of what's to come in terms of combat. Like, I know that Blitz and I have been playing this game pretty much nonstop. I just got the platinum. I think Blitz has either got the platinum or he's like one medal away. And combat just from the Yuffie chapter it's insane. It's incredible. So, Blitz, why don't you tell us what are your impressions of just we'll say everything but the ending of the DLC, and then we'll talk about the ending, obviously, in its own little conversation.
This DLC, it hits, it's lit, and it doesn't quit. Like, this shit is just non-stop, man. It just keeps going. I loved every single from the first second I booted it up, and we jump into the opening cutscene with Yuffie, and she's making her way into Midgar. You fight like the literally the bottom feeder of like enemies. Like, these enemies take like normally on a hard mode playthrough, they're pretty much dead in like one shot. But obviously Yuffie's a little lower level, so you get to combo them a little bit. And holy shit, does she combo?
Yeah,
I was blown away. Like, the game was like giving me tips and stuff, and I'm like, nah, I don't even want to see that. I just want to press shit and just do stuff and figure it out. And her combat is crazy to me because this is a $20 DLC, and I still believe that this is the best action combat game that Square has ever released. Ever released. Like, they shut me up. I was talking so much shit about aerial combat since a remake, and aerial combat in this game is by far one of the greatest things. It's freaking Devil May Cry level. Like, it's that crazy. If you want, you don't have to touch the ground with Yuffie.
That's right.
Ever.
That's right. And in fact, you shouldn't during certain fights. Yeah, there's some fights that just you cheese with aerial combos, especially in top secrets.
Not to piggyback off of what you just said, but the fact that you can use her dodge, her like ATB dodge, in the air. I was like, that's it. Like, that was all I needed to read. Oh, you can just do it in the air.
And it only takes like an eighth of a gauge. I mean, like, it's very meticulously balanced. You know, it's still incredibly challenging, but very fun. And it really rewards skill.
Yeah, because if you perfect time and you dodge while using it, it's called Brumal form.
Yeah.
Yes.
If you dodge with it at the right time, it gives you more ATB back.
Yeah.
Which is insane. So like, enemies that have guns that, like, you know, rapid shot, like if somebody shoots you with a gun like rapid shot, you'll get hit like 8 times. Yeah. You can spam it 8 times.
Yes.
And dodge every single bullet. It's ridiculous. Yeah. It's so good, man. Hats off to the combat development team and overall the team at Square for like for creating this. Like, this is something special, man. Like, I kid you guys not, I pretty much like shitted on them since, like, you know, like aerial combat was like, you know, in Remake last year, and they just were like, you know, all right, say less, I got you. That's like the first thing they went ahead and fixed.
I never thought that they would be able to fix aerial combat without a jump button, because I don't want them to add a jump button. I just don't.
Right.
This feels so good. They figured it out, and this is it. This is so.
Yeah. Do you know what I think is pretty crazy? Is that from a combat perspective, it's not something that I delve into deep, a very, very surface level appreciation for it. But I even DLC level, we've all enjoyed it phenomenally, but for so different reasons. Like, the complexity of this DLC alone is off the charts.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just a $20 DLC, you know. So I mean, it's pretty beefy. What other stuff do you have? I mean,
the music itself. The music is like for $20. You know what I've been doing all morning? I turned off all the sound effects in the game and all the character voices, and I've just been recording for myself, for my own videos. I've just been recording all the music throughout different segments of the game, just to have, because I know not a lot of people have it on YouTube right now. I don't know when that's going to be available. Probably next week, right? But
I had to pull the Nero soundtrack myself because I didn't want to get. So I did the same thing. Yeah.
Oh wait, I used mine in the last video I just made. I gotta go edit. But that soundtrack, as soon as we all heard it, we were like, that's fire right there. The music in this entire DLC is like the it's like the short, sweet version of Remake, where we just got so many different sounds and like genres and everything. And this one just is like, we're gonna take that and we're gonna just compact the whole thing into DLC and just make sure that we hit every note that we can. We got like just the craziest saxophone like songs. We got like incredible Dark Souls choirs. It's just all over the fucking map. And anything, we got Kingdom Hearts in there. All in the same fight. It's like, what's going on, dude? They really pumped this out.
Yeah, when I first heard it, my first thought is like, I wonder what Alex Mukala is thinking right now.
Oh, dude, exactly. I thought the same thing. I was like, he's gonna do something with this.
And I believe he is. I don't know where I heard him say this, but he did. He said that he's working on something. He's very excited about it. So
I bet.
Well,
so sorry to butt in. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Right, I've had to reconfigure my setup. So
it's a million times better.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
100%.
Okay.
Yeah.
So apologies for all the technical difficulties.
No.
We understand it's different over there.
I 100% promise I was saying something interesting.
We believe you. I mean, it's you're just doing your best catchy impersonation.
I know. It's like I'm at a disability already with this fucking accent. So technical issues are just But this should be us. This should be us.
Okay, let's get to the story. Okay, what did you guys think of the story? And now that we can hear our good friend Meat Juice Gallagher, let's hear him tell us what did you think of the intermission story. And I actually hear that you have some Easter eggs to tell us that you found out. Some you'll save for yourself, and that's fine. But you've got some for us, and I hope they're involving Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Yeah, that was a proper laugh out loud moment. That one. I do. I like when I was playing through it. My usual sort of way of doing things is just playing the game, but every time I spot an Easter egg is to make a note on my phone and then sort of come back to it and explore it a bit later. But like I was saying to you guys in the green room, that I collected more than 100 Easter eggs of things that I spotted. Now, a lot of it will be obvious stuff and a lot of it will be speculation, but there's a good sort of 40 or 50 Easter eggs in there that are just pure joy. So I brought quite a few of them along, some of the big ones. So I assume that you guys will have picked up on most of them anyway. So it was just to kind of get your takes on some of the really juicy stuff.
Ooh.
But in terms of the story overall, I thought the DLC was absolutely phenomenal. I really enjoyed the story. I was a bit. I would probably say where Remake's a 10 out of 10 for me. This one's maybe a sort of 9 out of 10. But I think it's maybe just because I blame Sleepezi, because I think his ending would have been much better.
I appreciate you saying that.
You know that way that everyone talks about Peasant and how his 15 story was much better. I think Sleepezi's deal or intermission story was much better.
I appreciate that. I actually thought about him as soon as I hit the ending. I was like, this is exactly what he felt like. I now understand.
So, like, but having said that, from from the moment that Scarlet presses the button, it just gets like it goes next level. Like everything with Nero was amazing. Like it was so haunting. It was like they took the sort of Genova breakout sort of creepiness and just turned it up to 11. I loved it. I loved every second of that. I felt, given that there was only 2 chapters, I actually think they did a pretty good job with Yuffie and Sonon. And I think so many of us expected that there would be a bit of conflict there, so that by the end of the DLC, you know, they would be fighting and, you know, perhaps have to fight each other, or she would have to kill him, or all that sort of stuff. And I think from a storytelling perspective, that would have been a huge challenge to achieve. Within 2 chapters. So I think the simplicity of it in the end will actually worked in their favour, because it's a good relationship, but Yuffie still gets the trauma out of it that she can take forward in the story. So I think there are a few, you know, not quite as many plot holes or questions unanswered as Remake itself, but there are quite a few in there that I hope will be addressed in the future. And I think Square Enix have learned from the amount of discussions that we've had, just as a community since the launch of Remake, that they very deliberately left a lot of questions to be answered, just to kind of keep us bobbing along for a while.
100%.
So
I definitely felt the same way.
So you gonna bring the juice? What do you got for us?
Right. Well, how do you want to do this? Do you want me to just fire through them, or do you want to chat about them? And because I mean these are quite a few meaty discussions.
Okay, let's pick like the top 3 right now, or just let's start with one. See what happens.
Okay. Let's see. I think we'll need to discuss the Vice stuff. I think we need to discuss the combat simulator stuff.
That sounds great.
That sounds like a heavy. That sounds like the meat and potatoes right there. Let's do it.
By the way, my favorite fight of all time, ever, is that Vice fight.
Vice fight.
Loved that fight. That fight was ridiculously fun, and
pushes you.
I think pushes you. And it turns out there was a much easier strategy than the one that I used. But in all fairness, I was able to beat Vice before that strategy was released. So I did post my Vice fight on YouTube, and you can check it out. And it was challenging. Like the first couple of times I was actually on stream, and it just destroyed me. And then I started to figure out the mechanics and stuff like that and get through all the phases. But there are some really cool. There's some just a real sense of threat, and like, I mean, I was sweating so much near my very first victory. Like I was pouring dripping sweat. Like the whole house was quiet, you know, as I approached the red line.
But before we get into the deeper lore stuff, do we all kind of just want to say what we have to say about Vice? Because I know that like as soon as MJ drops a bomb, it's gonna be like that's gonna be it. But I like you're saying stuff about combat, and I wanted to ask both of you what, like in terms of fights in this game, like where is it on the rank? Is this the toughest boss fight there is in the entire game? Is it harder than anything that we've seen in the base game or Remake? Because I'm getting this sense
by far.
Yeah, I get this sense from
he's unrelentless. He's relentless, bro. Like he's always after your ass, and it's ridiculous.
and honestly, like the best way to beat him is to avoid all of his phases. Like he's got one phase where he basically KOs the party, and your goal is just to kill him before he does that. Because otherwise it's like so hard to like survive the fight.
But your method was very creative, by the way. Like using Carbuncle.
Uh-huh.
That was cool. I was like, oh, okay, that's why he used it. All right, cool. I like that.
I definitely got this sense just from, and this is how I sort of perceived the DLC before it came out, and most DLC is that you kind of like, at that point as a developer, you kind of know what like the limitations of like your system is, right? Like you've tested the bosses, you've seen the reception to like the combat, you've seen all of these things that you as a developer can work on to create like just the most piece of shit boss to like really push people into the red line, I guess, or past the red line, as they say. But I was just really curious because one of the things I felt like just by watching it is that there was a lot of what you would learn after playing Yuffie's DLC and how to apply it to that fight too. I felt like a lot of like the timing of like attacks, for instance, was something that I kept noticing. And I was like, that seems like something that Yuffie's DLC really tries to push onto the player, is like not just like mindlessly like maybe blocking an attack that's coming at you or not being able to roll away from it, maybe not being able to dodge properly at certain times. Like Yuffie's DLC like really like focuses the player's mindset with like, for instance, the ATB dodge, which I keep failing to remember the name of, but you know what I mean.
Form,
Yeah, Rumel Farm. It was such an interesting way to keep the player. It was like Sekiro, like, and in terms of like, you need to know who you're fighting, exactly what they do, all of that stuff before you can master the game. Like
Absolutely.
100%, you need to watch animations, time everything properly, and then it's almost like the damage is like a secondary thing. The fun is knowing when you get to just start to wail on somebody.
When you get to damage him. Because, so, and my concern when I first started fighting Vice after, like, playing 8 hours of Yuffie is like, wait, it's different. But the more I did it, the more I realized it's actually not that different. Like, it didn't... So, my fear was that having to switch between the two would feel awkward. Like, the two different styles would feel awkward, and I was worried about what that meant for the future. But actually, like, my memory is able to incorporate them together now, and it feels like now I'm really excited for a scenario moving forward where Yuffie's in my party. Yeah. And I've got Cloud in it too. So like the way they blended that together was really, really, really cool. What are your thoughts, Blitz? I watched you beat him like 3 or 4 times on stream last night.
I loved that fight. I thought it was so cool. The music is so like subtle at first, and then it just picks up, and then it gets you really into it. And then you start sweating and misinputting shit, and then you start like, you know, air starts getting tossed around, and you just start feeling bad. And then you're like, oh god, when do I restart now? Like, how do I?
Yeah,
this dude is like, there's not a lot of room for error, and I like that, and I like that a lot. But one big thing that I gotta say though, going back to Yuffie's combat really quick. Aside from like the dodging aspect and the combo ability aspect being amazing in the aerial combat too, they finally rewarded dodging. Sorry, they finally rewarded blocking. Like blocking at the right time. Like if you perfect block, she will negate all that damage. She won't take any damage. You know how Cloud will still take like minimal damage even when he counterstances or parries or anything like that?
Right.
When Yuffie blocks, she doesn't take any damage. She says immune, and it buffs her. It gives her a status buff, which is insane.
Right now, just to clarify, that is in fact it's one of the weapon bonuses, so you won't get all those until your weapon level's high enough. But it's pretty easy to level up your weapons. So,
and it's cool. Like there's different things. Like one gives you a barrier, another one I believe gives you a health regen over time. I'm not sure. I got to relook at them, but it's just really cool that they do that. That's really awesome to me, because I felt like when I played Remake, it didn't feel rewarding to block. Like, I'm blocking, I'm counterstancing, but I'm still taking like 300 damage.
Right.
Yeah.
You know?
This is exactly what I was trying to say is that like the Vice fight is geared towards that sort of, from what I've seen, like with just the way that he slashes like certain directional like attacks, where it's like now we just want you to focus on evading, like evade these attacks. Don't just, some of them you have to take, but, or parry, or like, you know, it staggers him.
Don't get hit by him, but he swings his sword like 8 different directions. And it's
Exactly.
like, oh my God.
You just have to be so aware of him. And that, I feel, is a direct translation from the Yuffie thing. And I actually wanted to, and I don't want to get too far away from the Vice thing, and I have a segue so that we can talk about that. But one of the things I wanted to mention while we're talking about the combat is one of the things I actually started to not feel so sure about. It's not that it's a bad thing, but it was something that like kind of dawned on me after playing Yuffie's DLC is that she functions so well as an independent character. She doesn't even, like, I would even go as far as to say is that Sonan's fun, but like you don't really need him all that much. Like I didn't really focus any of my attention on playing Sonan, and I had just an absolute fucking blast just playing Yuffie. I think I had more fun in the Rom solo fight than I had with like, and I know that that's an extra depth of combat, and that's always good. Like having something more to learn is great. But one of the things I was thinking is going back into Remake, it's like these characters really feel like they rely on each other to feel complete in a certain way, like as a party. You kind of, the game is sort of wanting you to switch around, do all this stuff, where Yuffie feels like so singular. But then, and I just had this thought and I just wanted to share it, is that I would love for this to be a story driven development into the future of Remake, because one of the things that I talk about from a lore perspective or a story perspective is that the characters are sort of leaning on each other at the beginning. Right. And that's not necessarily what we want the characters to end up being. We want them to be independent and like be sort of not relying or hiding behind the party to deal with their issues. I think that transformation through combat would be an amazing thing to do, is to see each character sort of coming into their own, not only in the story, but being able to just play them independently like this. Would be absolutely, like, I would be on fire if I got to play a game 5 different times using just a different character that I love. Like just focusing on that. And if they can continue, and this is the thing is that they're going to keep developing these characters and make them more depthful in terms of like what they can do. Why not at that point? Why not just make it so to a point where you develop a system where you can just have it be that and not worry about, you know, the rest of the party or something like that. Like I can totally see that happening.
That would be amazing. I've kind of thought about the same thing of not quite Final Fantasy 12 style, but actually being able to alternate which character you're using in the field, so that you know obviously it kind of takes away from Final Fantasy 7 being Cloud's story a wee bit, but I think certain sections would be cool. I also agree with you in terms of the combat. I actually found the synergy really, really fun, but not necessary.
In hard mode, it's pretty necessary.
Okay, I haven't played Intermission in hard mode, but I actually loved Synergy. I thought it was such a cool, novel thing. And
I want every character to have it.
Oh,
it would be so cool. Just to sort of totally real Sleepezi's tangent back in.
Let's get back.
Yeah, I
just
Vice.
One of the things actually, just in terms of the combat, is that I've actually only tried fighting him a couple of times, and I got my ass handed to me both times, and I took the huff. So I watched some of yours earlier, Clark. I only managed like the first 5 minutes or something, but you like in terms of skill level from the game, like you and I are light years apart. Like I play the game for the story. I'm a total amateur in terms of combat, but what I really, really, really loved about the Vice fight is that Sleepezi, I've kind of sent some of these photographs over to him previously, but what a lot of people on the internet might not know is that there's a collection of like 200 photographs that were taken, like official photographs that were taken of the online mode, and there's quite a few different fights that you can face off against Vice in different locations during the online mode of Dirge of Cerberus. And the photographs that have been taken like there's to the best of my knowledge, there's no footage of any of these fights on YouTube, but there are quite a lot of photographs, and the movements of Vice in these photographs have been recreated in the combat simulator of Remake,
cool.
And I love it because like obviously the battle system's totally different to what it would have been like for the Dirge of Cerberus online mode. But to actually have that level of understanding to go back into files, I assume they've got videos or footage somewhere, but to go back in and recreate the movements from that's like serious levels of like you know what you're doing with your product kind of thing. Right. So like I love the Vice fight from that perspective alone. Just his movements were so reminiscent of what are in the old photographs.
I love that attention to detail, man. And like they do, and it's like it's crazy because they do that with all the characters, but even to go like far back to look at like you said, like other footage from Dirge of Cerberus to do that for Vice, that's crazy. Like with Yuffie's summon animation is the same animation she has in the original game.
Right.
Somebody posted that
cool.
Somebody posted that on Twitter, and I was like, oh shit! I shouldn't be surprised by it because it's something that they've been doing and that they care about a lot. But I love it so much, seeing the love and care and attention to detail with these little things.
Now, I will say that somewhere, and I haven't had time to look for this. It's either on a SEAL Team 7 or like a stream we did together or something. Sleepezi and I did have a discussion where we very clearly said that we think that Vice during his fight is going to pull up weapons from all the other Sphettes.
Yeah, so that's exactly what the thought was, that it was the idea that we know that Vice has the abilities of every other Sphet. And the idea is that if you're going to go into a phase, like, just switch between them. Like, this is like, and then Clark messaged me and was like, did you see the gun? And I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? And he said he gets the Azul gun. And I was like, I was going to save myself to try and like get to hard mode, but I was like, I'm weak. I can't. I have to see what this is. And I like couldn't rub the smile off of my face because not only is it not like it's only the two. It's only Rose of the Crimson and Azul, to my understanding. Right. There's no shelf reference, and that's exactly the two people that he fights.
Is somewhere else. There is a shelf reference somewhere else.
Okay, wait a second.
Well,
we gotta hear this.
It's pretty minor. See when you're fighting Deep Ground Soldier, when they appear before Nero does. And they turn invisible and come back in. That's what happens in the Shelt fight.
That's right.
In the WRO.
Right. I totally didn't see that. And it's the same. And oh my God, that makes so much sense. Oh, I'm losing it. That's so cool. All right. Yeah. Well, there she is. There's her. God, I love this game. And I think that attention to detail is like exactly what sells me on this. Like, I didn't have to get everything that I wanted out of this game in terms of everything that I predicted or anything like that. It's just always nice to see that they're doing so much just to make this game so cohesive with all parties. Like the Vice attention to detail, the Shulk, the weapon changes, the phases. It's just out of this world good.
I mean, there's another one that's slightly abstract, but if you this is just a silly observation, but if you go into the enemy intel and look at the Deep Ground Soldiers, they seem to have unnecessarily short legs and large feet, like kind of almost Kingdom Hearts style, which might also be a Shulk reference.
That's true. Yeah, she has really big feet. I feel like they would have stuck her in somewhere. I'm going to be honest. That was the one thing where I was like,
yeah, me too. I was the most surprised.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so that was a good one. That was a good start. Like, MJ Repeat Please is being asked by a highlighted message from Faith Burb. Can you ask what MJ needs to repeat? and then we'll ask him in a bit.
Sure.
So, okay, that was definitely a great point. So I'd love to hear your next one that we can branch off.
Okay,
of.
well,
away.
I've not even started on the Vice stuff. I was just waiting for you guys.
That was just a teaser, baby.
Okay,
Just getting
let's hear it.
Right. Okay, so obviously there's the obvious one where he's been connected and he's been uploaded to the combat simulator, and it's given him the idea for S&D, right? And at the end of the battle, there's quite a few references to the future. So the first one is "See You in Deep Ground," which suggests that Dirge of Cerberus canonically is not off the table. Second of all, you obviously get to see him laughing and get to see like the flashes forward to Dirge of Cerberus, where it's him sitting on the throne with his shirt off, and then Hojo laughing. Okay, so that's obviously a scene that's lifted directly from Dirge of Cerberus when you get to see the big reveal that Hojo has been controlling his mind the whole time, right? So this conversation is happening, or at the end of the battle, the conversation is happening with Cloud, but it's obviously being monitored by Chadley. Now, we've spoken about this a few times before.
Wait,
in chapter 9 or chapter 14.
1 second. Too much videos.
I think we're good.
Okay. But can you guys hear MJ okay?
I think now they can.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can you hear me all right?
Yeah.
Okay,
I just turned on the stream to hear it. Sorry.
Okay, sure. So basically, we're now in a situation where in the remake itself, Chadley says to Cloud, or makes a reference to Cloud about Cloud's actions in the future, or it suggests that Chadley has understanding of what goes on in the future. But we're now in a situation that Chadley and Vice are connected, and Vice is now showing images of the future. So the question then becomes, is what Chadley has seen the Vice S&D thing, or have we had it round the wrong way the whole time, that when the Vice battle starts and he starts going through the whole like his introduction speech from Dirge of Cerberus about slaughter everyone and slash and hack and all this stuff, right?
Right.
So how does he know this stuff?
Oh.
So
that's actually that's a rabbit hole right there.
Right. So there are only two answers to that. The first one is that there's a connection to the future, which obviously there's quite a lot of reference to in Remake anyway. The second one is that we've had it in reverse, that Dirge of Cerberus is something that's actually been planned for a long time.
I think that's more likely.
So there's a lot to unpick from that, but I think the connection between Vice and Chadley is something that we can explore more extensively.
I wanted to ask you specifically, what do you necessarily mean by working backwards? Because I might know what that means, but I'm just for clarification, Oh,
okay, sure. So what I mean is that if we are kind of looking at it from a Remake's perspective, we're looking at Vice in the present saying things from Dirge of Cerberus. So your immediate assumption is to say he has an understanding of the future.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas it might be that in Dirge of Cerberus, like he's already said this stuff in the past, so he's just recalling it in Dirge of Cerberus.
Right.
In which case,
which is like 4 years. 4 years from where Remake technically is.
Yeah, 3 years later, but which suggests then that everything that's going on in Remake is planting the seed for the eventual plan in Dirge of Cerberus, which actually goes against what's in Dirge of Cerberus itself, because Hojo specifically says that he hatched the plan to use Dirge of Cerberus to kind of awaken Omega only after he fought Vincent.
Right.
Because he then saw that Vincent turned into chaos and then believed Lucrezia's thesis. So it's only at the Mako Cannon scene that Hojo hatches this plan. So to suggest now that all of this is they're kind of laying a trail of breadcrumbs. It kind of messes with the head a little bit. So
Right.
because it's only been 2 days, I've not had a lot of time to sit down and work out exactly how I feel about it. But it's just to highlight that's there's obviously surface level references to Dirge of Cerberus, but there's a huge amount more that when you start to unpick it, what does it all mean? In particular, like the bit with Hojo laughing alongside Vice, like that's a specific image from Dirge of Cerberus, but what does it mean showing it now?
Means that it's not going to happen later, or is it just a callback or like a subtle like nod to like future events? Yeah,
I think it might be a mild retconning or like I mean, it's technically going to be a retcon, but it seems like maybe reintegrating the entirety of the compilation under the narrative flow style of Nojima.
Do you guys like the fact, and this is maybe something to discuss with everybody, because now that we've sort of had like the base of that conversation laid out by Mo, what do you guys then think of the dialogue during that same ending sequence of that fight where Hojo literally says to like us, "See you in deep ground," and then he vanishes? Like, what on earth does that mean then?
Who is he talking to?
Is he talking to the party? Is he like, see you in like in the future of Remake, or like maybe to be continued in Dirge of Cerberus?
I'll see you guys in Ever Crisis, basically.
Yeah. That was why I thought that I'll see you in Ever Crisis, but because I can't for the life of me imagine why they would go back to Deep Ground during the story. I think that would just be a bit mad unless Zack goes. But we'll get to that.
We'll get to that. So before we get to that, though, like, okay, let's talk about some stuff. Let's talk about Avalanche and Wutai. First of all, I will admit there's still a lot of questions to be asked, and what this DLC sort of informed me of is that they're going to explore that at length in future parts, instead of them wrapping up mysteries and stuff like that about what happened, what's going on with Rufus, what's going on with, like, why was the president dangling from the ledge, who's Nell, Finn and Al. It didn't necessarily address that stuff. It just kind of left those open, which makes me think that they're really going to expand that moving forward. Like, they created this very functional bond between Wutai and Avalanche, and so I for one still think that we know that Neo and Nell are, and Finn and Al and etc. Finn and Polk are the same people.
Billy Bob.
Yeah. Exactly.
Forget,
and like, I still think those are the same people. We just never got to that in the story. But what are you guys' thoughts about Avalanche, Wutai, and did you find any fun story details or anything that you found particularly interesting? There's one obvious one, and I'll let one of you guys say it. But why don't you start us off, MJ?
Well, just to kind of quickly run through a few things. I totally agree with you in terms of it kind of felt too obvious that they didn't address who Neo, Billy Bob, and Polk actually were. They didn't reveal who Juju was at all, despite laying the very deep hint that he's actually a ninja. Obviously, we've speculated for months now about the connection with Biggs, which suggests to me that we'll find Biggs in Wutai the next time we see him, as well as all those other characters, and that will sort of bridge that gap. The big one for me is obviously Godo and Godo's story and what's happening with him in the background, because that's a bit of a change from where we were last time, because
Mhm.
obviously in the original game, when you visit Wutai, there's no real sense of government. The only sort of form of implied authority is the five mighty gods at the pagoda, and Godo's obviously the leader, and therefore by extension implies that he's in charge. But to have this sort of subplot of his fall from grace, and that not only his his role in the story completely changed, but this Wutai government, or new Wutai government, has almost sort of usurped him in a way. Which obviously it creates this really bizarre dynamic where Yuffie has effectively turned her back on her father in a bigger way than she did in the original. Because originally she just ran away, but here she's actually working for the individuals who took his power away from him. So I found that's a really interesting dynamic, and something that I'm very excited to explore. Kind of moving forward.
She mentions he's in jail and stuff, right?
Yeah, she does. Yeah, and she specifically mentions that it's the new government that put him there. Which, I kind of felt that it was pretty cool. The relationship with Sonon, because Sonon still seems to have hold Godo in very high regard. So it's maybe what we're hearing is kind of Godo through Yuffie's perspective, which is maybe not exactly how Godo's going to be. But I really like the new dynamic. I really liked, and I'm sure Sleepezi did the same as me and sort of burst out laughing when they specifically referenced chapter 14 in Before Crisis. Like that was amazing.
I was like spitting at that point. I was like, oh my god, they just validated this entire thing, and I couldn't have been more happy. Like, if there was one thing that like I didn't know was gonna hit me that hard, I was just like, and it's so minor for everybody else. It's so minor. But as soon as Sonon was like, hey, remember that time? I was just like, shut the fuck up, Sonon. Like, I can't do this. I can't handle this right now as a side thing. So crazy. Yeah, I love that. I love that.
Well, actually, just while we're going on for that, have you guys, did you get the digital deluxe version of the game?
Yes.
Yeah.
Have you seen the art? Have you looked at the art book?
I haven't looked at it yet. I'm gonna bring it up.
Are you okay to go ahead, or for me to go ahead and mention what's in the art book?
Please are do. You guys Blitz?
Oh, please do.
I want to look at it right now. Holy shit.
Okay.
I'm getting it ready.
So, what have you got to open, or do you want me just to say Sleepezi?
No, go for it. I want to hear exactly what you're about to say.
Okay, so in the art book, it reveals what the concept art was for Yuffie going to Sector 7. So Sector 7 looks pretty different to what actually appears in the game.
I can actually show it off.
Okay.
Let me put it on the screen for everybody here.
Right. So do you know the specific image that I'm going to talk about?
It's the one on the way to Sector 7.
Well, I was actually going to talk about the interior image when she arrives at HQ.
Okay, let me get there, and then I will pull it up.
Bring it on. Yeah, the PowerPoint presentation has begun.
I want the PowerPoint so bad. And if it's the interior, MJ, then like in my mind, I'm like, there's gotta be something in that fucking art, dude. Holy shit. I'm sorry. Like, I know that this isn't a big deal for anybody else, but I swear Before Crisis is like the most underrated, like, and you know what? Just to jump off really quick while we're buying time here for Clark. I think this Wutai thing and the Avalanche thing going into the future, and the fact that they mentioned the Before Crisis thing is it's a literal perfect thing to capitalize on. So like Square obviously sees the value in that story and extending that story to a degree to see like how things have unfolded. Oh, here we are. Oh, okay. We have Old Guard. We have fucking Old Guard in there.
Yes. So that's basically what the concept art reveals, is that originally she was going to team up with Old Guard, not Avalanche HQ.
Yeah.
That makes
And
so much sense.
And Old Guard are the ones that she fought against and hates. Actively says that she hates.
Mm-hmm.
So that would have made
good.
the story even more interesting. But
well, and you know what? It would have actually been the exact opposite of what we see in the DLC, because what we learned from Sonon is that he's like, we should have sided with the people who are more aggressive, the ones who are
Splinter
actually
Cell
taking
crew. Let's
right,
go.
the one who are actually taking action, and it's Yuffie who's like, like I guess, but like to think it makes way more sense for Sonon's character to not have fallen into this group necessarily. Like it makes way more sense that he would have assessed that way beforehand and been like, I want to be active. I want to be actively pursuing like the quicker, straightforward action. Whereas this feels more like he was instructed not to, which does play into his character and reveals a lot about his personality, that conflict for him. But I would have eaten that shit up, dude. So wait a second. So, and this is kind of important, is that we're under the train station. We're like in a completely new area.
yeah.
Is that area ever actually shown? There's a we have several fights in the opening trailer, or the first trailer we showed, where
There's
it's
a
very
hand crane
dark
in the background.
I was looking at that too. That's so sick. This is so much. I'm sorry. This is a lot.
Do you mean the archways, the sort of archways beneath the train?
Yeah,
that's what I was thinking as well. That the archways show up in the artwork,
right?
But no, we don't ever see anything like that. But I think that's on the plate, isn't it?
Well, and it's definitely somewhere either in the construction site right before we get to the I guess the introduction to, or I guess the what part is that? I'm trying to think of where right after we fight the bird mini boss or
plate maintenance.
Yeah, it feels like that sequence takes place there, but then when I look back at it, it almost seems like it's more at the beginning. This looks so much sicker than, by the way, that the head of that giant centipede looks eerily similar to the dog form of like the Deep Ground soldiers. Like just the way that it's like eyes glowing in the face, like that looks like a way bigger callback. Also, it looks like that storage thing, that those stacked up barrels look like they could have been interactable with like the shuriken. You see what I'm saying? Like to like stagger, maybe that would have been really cool.
I love this concept here because it's one of the. I love the idea of having gold framed pictures of her creations.
And I really, really, really want to come back to this, but we'll do the Avalanche stuff first, okay?
Okay.
Can I just say that I know probably what you're talking about? I'm freaking out internally about that image.
Yeah, me too. Damn, so we'll get there. So Avalanche.
Oh God. Yeah, Avalanche.
I personally felt like I didn't trust them. I don't know what it was about them, but I just felt like they're not, like, they seem too nice. They seem too nice, and things, like I felt like they might have been working towards like a higher agenda with the way they were moving around and stuff and talking. But it's hard to pinpoint really because they didn't give them as much depth of that as I thought they would. I thought that when we finished the chapter after saving GGA, I thought we were gonna come back and have a whole another segment in Sector 7 slums with them and like interact with them a little bit more. But it was more or less just like a segment to wrap up whatever other side missions you haven't done and Fort Condor stuff, and then have one final like talk with them. But it wasn't really like a talk; it was just a really abrupt like send off. Yeah, it's just I personally would have loved to see a lot more from them. And you guys are right; like their names. Like especially Billy Bob, it sounds kind of like those are just code names to cover up other names, right?
Right. Yeah, I just 100%.
I just feel like there's something about them that, and I really don't think that they're like dead or anything like that either. From like the platefall, I feel like they got out early. They knew what was up, and they were like, "No, we're not sticking around. We're just gonna leave."
Yeah, that's absolutely. I like I said, I think they're going to show up in Wutai, and I think. Gigi's got a much bigger role to play I think he's maybe the ringleader of that group.
I don't trust him. I still don't trust GJ. I've never have.
I think we all had this very early impression of most of these characters very closely like understood. It was just about not realizing that maybe, and this is exactly what we've been sort of echoing in this conversation, is that it almost seems like we're only being introduced to them here because they're going to be important later. Yeah. And I think that, I am a big proponent of like the Wutai connection with Rufus, and there's a huge amount of that seems to be coming up in ways that I couldn't even have predicted. I couldn't have, like the government, like instated in Wutai as an example, is that something that Rufus has more control over? Because it almost seems like there's a narrative of like, almost, I want to say, like, you know how Nanaki has like this false view of his father? Like, I feel like Yuffie is kind of in that same area in the dark about like what happened, because it's like, oh, like he's a prisoner. He's literally a prisoner. And it sounds like he just couldn't give up on like trying to end like Shinra or anything like that, or he was going about it in such a way. It's almost like the game is constantly, with each iteration of group that we see, that there is the far extreme version of that government or group, and then there's the conservative, like, we're not going to do anything too drastic and more in the shadows sort of approach. So we have that with Avalanche. We have that sort of with Shinra, with like just the differences between like Rufus and his father. The other thing I wanted to really quickly mention, because I don't want to get too far away from this conversation without mentioning it. You said that you were suspicious, Blitz, about like the characters and that you didn't trust them. One of the things that Neo says about the dialogue between her and with her, Sonnen and Yuffie, as they're about to go meet Don Corneo's men or run into them, is she is asked about like what the difference is essentially between the two, the Splinter Cell and them, and she's starting to like sort of harp on Barrett's group, but then she says something, and I was like, I've heard this before, and I couldn't tell where this was from, but I immediately afterwards, and I never talked about it on the stream, but I immediately figured it out. But she says, what we're trying to do is create, and then she pauses for no reason. She just pauses, and then she says, a brighter future. And
nobody that's a good person ever says that.
The brighter future line, for those who haven't been keeping up with the news coming out before Intergrade started, is that those are Rufus's words,
right,
from a newspaper article. They are establishing that he is in control of them right there. That is,
isn't it in Before Crisis? It's explained. I'm sorry, because I haven't played Before Crisis, but I remember reading somebody talking about that Rufus was behind the attacks on President Shinra back in the day from the Avalanche cell that attempted to take President Shinra's life. Like, apparently Rufus sent them to do that.
It was the financier of Avalanche.
He financed them, and he was also like their info. He was their man on the inside, and they hear this echo of this in when we see Scarlet talking to Yuffie and Sonnen too, where she's like, oh no, Sonnen has already run off, and she's just talking to Yuffie while Sonnen's exploring or figuring something out in like the post deep ground stuff or pre deep ground stuff, and she says, you must have somebody with like a lot of insider information. And we know that can't be the mayor, because the mayor doesn't know shit. The mayor doesn't even have enough clearance to get into that area that they're in. So the only other person that it could possibly be is Rufus. And with the brighter future line, and then also on top of that, going back to, oh God, what was I going to say?
Just before you do, like, I was going to bring that up as well about Scarlet. She says there must be a mole, and then she pauses and looks to the side, and it's you can literally hear her, the cogs in her mind going, "Oh shit, yeah!" Like, it's literally been a week since, like,
Oh, she's
See,
out.
see, just to create a timeline for players, for listeners actually. In Before Crisis, the epilogue of Before Crisis is that Rufus has a hearing with Scarlet and President Shinra, where he presents that the Turks were actually acting in the best interests of Shinra and therefore should be reinstated because Shinra are about to have them all executed. But Rufus stands in, right? So this occurs the same night as Mako Reactor 1 bombing.
Mm-hmm.
So literally, we're talking days. When you see Scarlet's face, where it's not a callback to oh shit years ago. That's what was happening in Before Crisis. It's literally days in terms of the compilation's timeline that they had the conversation of Rufus is now working for Shinra. The Turks are now on the right side. So she's very, very suspicious, and you can see all of that happening within the look.
Mm-hmm.
I cannot. So a lot of, and I'm gonna stop here on the conversation so I can let you guys, like, I know that I'm all over this, but the thing I'll say is that a lot like that was the thing that like my last video was really focused on, is this particular aspect of like this dynamic between these groups, and the fact that they are moving forward with that, I couldn't have been any more excited. And it's not about all of these answers needing to be here. If anything, what they did is they just planted more seeds for things like that to start to grow into the concepts introduced in that video in the future. And I think that's 100% happening with Wutai. And I think they 100% they created a better space for those ideas, I think. Even though this is just DLC, like I want to know the government situation now. I was completely uninterested in that when I heard it in like the bios for the characters. I thought it was an interesting new like perspective, but I didn't think it was going to be such a drastic change. So like, even though like I know people are going to fucking be weird about this, but I said, like, a lot of people thought that Genesis was the thing that I was like really gunning for. And yeah, like, I think that this was the most likely place for him to end up. But what I was more excited for was to see these groups evolve into the future of the games and really like, establish themselves for the story to continue to explore really captivating ideas. So the fact that Rufus is still sort of in the mix here of being the potential leader of all of these things happening and being involved with Juji, right? It's like,
so I take it you caught that as well, yeah.
Yeah.
The Juja bit, yeah.
I couldn't be more happy with how they are handling this. I don't want to expect too much from this game either.
What Juji bit, just for the audience?
Oh, okay, just for the benefit of the audience, when Juja is caught by the Shinra troopers just before you fight the Gigantopede. And they ask him where he got his intel. He says Heidegger, and they're like, no, that's absolute bullshit. And the next one, he says, well, no, tell us. And he pauses, and if you look at his face very, very closely, like it's the same way that when you're trying to identify whether or not someone's telling the truth or telling a lie. You can kind of catch the subtleties in it. And look at when he says Heidegger, look at when he says Hojo, and then look at when he says Rufus. And his face changes subtly when he says Rufus, indicating that actually that's the truth. I got this from Rufus.
He's looking him dead in the eye too, and he's like, okay, like I will tell you the truth.
And he's like, don't say.
You still won't believe me. And so he's like, fuck it, he's a tricky character, that guy. And
I still think GJ attacked Yuffie in the beginning of the DLC. Like with the pigeons, because remember he's been using pigeons, like carrier pigeons, to send messages around. And
I didn't think of that. That's so
he never shows up. She said that she was told the hat was supposed to be there, and he wasn't wearing the hat. He comes up to her, he's like, hey, and he shows her the hat. He's not wearing it. It's like he probably took out the person who was supposed to go and meet up
killed
with
the
her.
hat guy. Yeah.
Holy
Yeah.
shit.
And he's blonde. He's the third brother. Okay. He is definitely
Don't even bring this.
Evan and Lazard's third sibling.
That's
Wow.
what it is. It's all connected to Shinra's siblings. And is he the new Lazard? Is that what you're trying to say?
He's
This is-
Wutai Lazard. He's Wutai Evan instead of
But can we-
Nibelheim Evan. Yeah.
Take a beat here and say that like none of this stuff is like, and maybe this is a question for Blitz, because I know that like me, Clark, and like MJ have like our heads like way in to like Dirge of Cerberus and like being okay with these elements, and not that you're not, but like from your experience of the game going through it, did you see these things as subtractive, even if they were like Dirge or like before Crisis, as we've been talking about? Like, are these things that like you as a fan of the original coming into Remake and enjoying it, are you excited about the direction of all of these things?
Oh yeah, like I was never a player or like a fan that felt like burned by Dirge of Cerberus. I played it once, I was okay, and I completely forgot all about it, to be honest. But like I've said a lot in previous statements, the character development and the direction that the creators of this fucking game Remake has been going in, they have me by the balls, bro. They seriously. I don't think that they can do anything wrong. I feel like they can really introduce like characters that were so shitty that people hated and don't want anything to do with anywhere in the story, and make us actually interested in them or like them, you know?
Right.
And that's how I feel about like the Dirge of Cerberus stuff, because obviously they want to take the entire compilation and continuity of Final Fantasy VII and turn it into this giant set piece of like MCU like universes, right? And I understand the reason why they would want to do that. It's cool. It gets a lot of people invested. There are some people that are bigger fans of Dirge of Cerberus than actually original Final Fantasy VII. That exists. It happens. They want to include, and they probably understand that they were wrong in certain areas or aspects in the way that they did storytelling and character development, that they probably want to not retcon, but like fix it going forward and do it properly this time around, which I think is a great idea. So when I see things about Dirge of Cerberus implemented or being talked about, I'm excited, because I love more stuff. I love more lore. I love more opportunities for different stories to exist within this media that I love.
100%. I couldn't
Very
agree
well
more,
said.
Yeah.
And you know, like we bring this up a lot. I brought it up a lot, but I was not a fan of Dirge of Cerberus, and I even didn't like the characters. Like, I understood the lore deeply. I like got into it because it was Final Fantasy VII related, and I felt like, hey, maybe I just need to look deep, and I will like Nero and Vice. You know, but it felt like throwing a Kojima game into a Nojima game, and you know, so it felt discordant. The like deep horror vibes that was missing from the Genova element in Remake, you know, like the no blood and like the you know, the lack of just that kind of waking up to this horrific thing experience.
Yeah.
Like that was captured by the Nero fight to me. Nero was so well characterized. He was just this brutal, sadistic, psychotic nightmare, and I was here for it so hard. You know, that whole thing was so beautiful. And even Vice, even though he gets like kind of minimal characterization, his VA is supreme, just an excellent like just really fitting of the character. And the actual design with the jacket and everything and the combat was so engaging that I'm like, I feel like, speaking of Kojima, this was like the difference between Raiden and Metal Gear Solid 2, which everybody hated and wanted to kill everybody for the fact that he even existed, to Raiden in Metal Gear Solid 4, when he was a cyborg ninja that killed like these cow robots. That was so awesome. And you're like, this is rad. They saved Raiden. Like, I felt like it was that level of transition. And so I'm super, super excited. So you know, moving into the next detail, before we get too far, Mo did want to bring us back, and since Mo is the hardest guy to get on the show because he's across the sea, he wanted to bring us back to a picture which I'll bring up now.
Sure.
Yes, please do that. Please do that. Don't mind me while I silently sit here and freak out.
First of all, I do want to say I love this kind of thing. This is I think the most, the best part about the.
I need to look at this. This is already
Rama with no beard.
Yeah,
Rama with just a biker mustache. I love that. Okay, I digress here.
Babyface Rama.
What you gonna do, brother?
dude.
Okay, here we go. MJ, take it away.
Okay, so I'm assuming that the rest of you are on the same wavelength as I am, that this is First Soldier territory.
And we do need to talk about First Soldier because Blitz and I, by the way, got addicted to that experience.
Oh hell yeah, man! I love that game.
And completely agree. I completely agree here.
Right. So now that we've established that the test area, that you first sort of start battling Scarlet's baddies in. So it's obviously basement 16, which is, my understanding is that is still above surface level, but it's obviously right deep down into the core of the pillar. But I could be wrong. So it means then that we're in a situation where it's still close enough to the surface for 30 years ago in First Soldier timeline that it would have actually existed, right?
Yes.
We're also in the situation where we came across the combat simulator, the old combat simulator.
Yes.
And within the old combat simulator, we fought Projector.
Yes.
The Projector, of course, is, to my eyes anyway, looks identical to the big thing that's in the middle of the lobby.
Right.
In First Soldier. Right? As part of Projector, when you're battling Projector, you're also fighting against Diabolic Creation.
Yep.
Diabolic Creation, as part of the NM Intel, says that it no longer exists. It was killed off because it was too crazy. So it only exists in the combat simulator. In the Japanese soundtrack, we've obviously all had the discussion that it's Heretic, really. Which is the connection there is it's either Heretic Colours reference, really. I think the translation is, I've written it down somewhere. Where is it? Scattered or coloured light, which might be a Sviet reference, or it might be a reference to Dr. Rayleigh, who's obviously in Chapter 5 of Before Crisis, who is a scientist carrying soldier data. Which happens to be, as far as I can, I think it specifies it's the Sector 7 train station, which, as we know now, is very close to part of the deep ground facility from Remake. So there's a connection here where it's very possible that the face on Diabolic Creation is to do with really an experiment that went wrong historically. The tentacles as well are a big giveaway that's a Genova creation, because if you look at Dreamweaver Genova, the tentacles are all over the place. If you look at specimen HO512, that has the same tentacles.
You're about to make me lose my mind, because there's so many references just in this one fucking character, with the Before Crisis, as you mentioned, the hints of Genova, the Hojo boss reference is one of them.
Yeah.
Very similar.
Yeah.
The one thing I haven't heard. Sorry. Go
Okay, I'm just very quickly. My theory on this is that this is the end boss for the first soldier part of Ever Crisis.
Ooh.
Really?
I would put money on that. I would put money on that.
Yeah, because it said it's a long time ago that it was created, and First Soldier takes place, what, 50 years prior?
30.
30.
30 years
But
prior?
it's perfect example because there's so many nods to the game already in just this one area. Like I totally see that happening, like 100%.
Wow.
See, I love this shit.
This is smart. And so it's reminiscent too of a character of the machinoids in the Nibelheim reactor, and the difference I think between like the machinoids we see in Nibelheim and the weird creations we see in Deep Ground and Remake, the unknown experiments. I mean, could very well
entities,
it could very well come down to which type of de novo cells were involved.
Oh, 100%.
G cells or S cells. This almost looks like an S cell creation.
See,
just to sort of very, very slightly go back to that point, just because of fucking OCD about this stuff. The difference is when Cloud has his little hallucination, it shows that the unknown entities inside a Mako capsule. The pods at the Nibelheim reactor are actual materia condensation chambers. They're separate to Mako pods.
Yes.
So the idea is that you put a life form in a materia condensation chamber. So I don't think it's the Genova cell element. I think it's the Mako density or Mako compression element that changes. But I only wanted to say that because it would have fucking ruined my night to not get that out. Sorry.
I want to.
There you go.
Would you say, because, okay, actually, if you go back to that image, there is one thing to mention, because I do want to draw a particular parallel, because we're drawing a lot of conclusions to Genova and like those references, but there's more to the Machinoid thing, because not only is it in the headpiece, like the sort of branches sort of coming out of the head, it's also in the cod piece. It's the same as where their legs would be, but instead it's replaced with tentacles. It's literally the same piece that you would see on the Machinoids.
That's
and
interesting.
The discoloration in this particular sort of, I'm just going to use the word Machinoid, but like just for the sake of discussion, is the discoloration in the actual model we see in game is one that you see in Benora Underground, not the one that you see in Nibelheim. So this is not just like some random throwaway like designed enemy. This is a Hojo reference. This is a Machinoid reference. This is a Crisis Core reference. And apparently, from the amazing observation that MJ just made, a fucking first soldier reference, along with maybe a reference to Before Crisis in the naming of the song of that in Japanese. And that's like a home run hit of 5 different references in one fucking enemy. Like, the amount.
But I actually suspect the only reason they didn't call it really here is because Before Crisis was never released outside of Japan, so no one would have made the connection to the name.
Right. That would make the most sense to me. That entire section of the game, pain level maximum, dude. Talk about a fantastic driving force, like to start off like the final part of the game. Unbelievable.
Yeah. So there we go.
That bastard.
There he or she is in its sexy glory. I would also point out as well, I suppose obviously the connection is we were hoping that there would be a connection to Rayleigh, but notice that it doesn't actually specify a gender as well. That was something that I picked up on just in case it is.
Do you see where the legs sort of connect, like where the legs would connect? If you turn it back around to the back of him, like you see where leg joints would be, but they just are tentacles, and that's just the creepiest thing to me. This is definitely, as described in the name, like completely nightmare, like inducing, diabolic Like this is an insane combination of
it's like Ursula from The Little Mermaid when you were like 3 years old. Like proper levels of terrifying.
Yeah, that was inappropriate of them.
I'm just noticing there's a fucking tendril on the back of him. That's the same one from an unknown.
It has a face,
fucking wing, and a face. As a fucking. What side is that on? Is that the same
left side,
or is that the same as the unknown entities?
Actually, there's an unknown entity in this.
Also,
I can just look.
Gap is very
same
left.
side. Same side.
I don't know, guys.
Wow,
I'm about
good
to lose
spot.
it.
Good spot.
It also has the same like spine sort of area and the same butt. I hate to say it like that, but it's got the same butt. So I'm about to go crazy. This is the stuff that like. Also, both chests open up for the unknown entity, not the unknown entity, but the failed experiment boss.
Yeah.
But that one is noticeably not purple. In this one, it's purple, and in the other fight, it's red. So, like, maybe the distinction is being made through those colors, but that wing really is throwing me. I swear, Square, stop playing with my heart. Either put Genesis in the game or don't even bring them up at all. I can't handle it. That's so cool.
Somebody had asked about the age of Angeal and Genesis. They're the same age as Sephiroth, right?
Yeah, I think it's approximately 6 months older than.
Okay.
Just 2025, I think, right?
In Crisis Core, right?
Like
maybe 25 in Crisis Core and 31 in current timeline.
Yeah, basically, all the official timelines give a range between 30 to 25 years before Crisis Core. Like that's it. There's not a specific date of birth for any of them, but the scenario Q&A is part of the. Is it the Q? It's not the Crisis Core Ultimania. What's the keywords? Oh God, what's the document? Anyway, basically there's a scenario Q&A where they do specify that Angeal and Genesis were born almost at the same time. Like, you know, it can be considered very, very close together. And Sephiroth was born shortly afterwards, but we're talking well within a year of each other. So there's not. That's the closest we ever get to a specific age or specific detail.
Yeah.
But Genesis, given his name, you would assume is the actual first one to have been born.
Yeah, you can, and then it's even unclear. I mean, we can kind of. I know there's always been speculation that actually Rosso the Crimson is the oldest, and potentially older than Sephiroth. The whole first soldier thing is
Yeah. I don't think that's true. Because Rosso is the first child to be born successfully in Deep Ground.
Right.
So that's basically what.
Oh yeah.
That's what's special about her. She's the first child to be born in Deep Ground and survive, but I don't think she's born of the Genova Project. Or at least it's never specified that she's born of the Genova Project. But my understanding is that Deep Ground started as a military facility,
right?
Which means that
medical facility, right?
That's military medical facility.
Umbrella.
So my understanding of that would be that any experimentation that went on with Genova would only have kicked off after Sephiroth was born,
right?
Because they got it perfect with Sephiroth. But that would be my take on it, in a very kind of short and not explaining the nitty gritty details side of things. But there's no specific answer, so it's all open to interpretation.
Just like Sephiroth's height. Sephiroth's height is very likely wrong. In a lot of official sources, they say he's like 6'1" or 6'2", but like based on literal comparisons to 6'1" characters, he's got to be at least 6'5", 6'6".
Well, I think the part of the problem with that is that there's fucking 4 Sephiroths.
I know. that can't help, yeah.
If you even just watch the original game, like right before you go into the Northern Crater, fucking Sephiroth is huge by that time. He's gigantic compared to like the other character models. Like he's a beefy dude. So like you just mentioned, it's like we are seeing varying like different forms of just what Sephiroth is presented like. So it's all up in the air. Official, I would imagine more for him as like an actual human being before maybe like all this surreal shit happened to him. So.
Do you think when you're in the Northern Crater, when you're on your way down to the reunion, you fight that big Gigas thing, like that's about three double-decker buses tall? Maybe whatever he's been eating, Sephiroth's been eating as well.
That's right. Well,
that's why he's so massive. Yeah,
Mako wouldn't be far off beat from that. I would imagine.
That's very true.
Because we know that's what makes the creatures get all crazy anyway. So. Brings all the boys to the yard.
Okay, so all right, we went nuts on that, and I appreciate that. Some of that's really good. Next topic I want to bring up was just so let's go chapter by chapter within. Let's get into intermission now and what happened. Chapter 1. Some really interesting stuff happened.
GG attacks Yuffie.
GG attacks Yuffie. So that's interesting. There are reunion clones right off the bat. And some of those even have precedent. Some of those reunion clones we see in Nibelheim. I'm sure that MJ picked up on that and can tell us about that.
Well, that's off the top of my head, I wouldn't be able to tell you exactly where they are. They might not be Nibelheim. They might be at either the Temple of the Ancients or the Northern Crater as well. But when you encounter, or not, there are some clones that you don't get to speak to, like the ones that are throwing themselves into the crater and things like that.
Right.
So some that you don't actually get to speak to, so it's unable to verify what number they are.
Right.
But if you count them as separate, there are 18 different clones that you can encounter across the original Final Fantasy VII, which means that at least, or you would make the assumption then that 2 of the clones that you encounter in the Sector 7 slums are like the number 11 and number 16 are very likely also clones that you would encounter later in Remake. Well, the OG.
Well, you do in fact encounter, I believe it's 12, or it might be 11. I think it's 12 actually, and you encounter in Tifa's kitchen in the OG.
Yeah, there's definitely. I think there's one that's even higher than that.
Oh yeah, no, and so it's 11. It is 11, and 11. She's in the Nibel. She's in the Nibel. He's in Nibelheim, and he's in Tifa's kitchen. There are other numbered clones that appear in Picturing the Past. Like number 24 appears, and then there's 2 that we don't get the numbers in Picturing the Past. Glenn and Getty. And then there are like references to numbered clones, but we don't get actual numbers in The Kids Are All Right.
Yeah.
And we get names.
We get names, but not numbers. Yeah.
Right, and the names are Game of Thrones reference. So there's Edmund Stark and Catelyn Stark, and just in case you were absolutely certain that nobody would die in Remake, just know that in his spare time, Nojima became a huge Game of Thrones fan. So, I'm not saying expect a red wedding, but don't expect everybody to make it out of this.
Jujay setting up for that red wedding, dude. He's going back to Wutai with the rest of Avalanche. What on earth is going to happen there? Who knows?
So we had Genova clones, and we even ran into Marco. But they seem to be saying reunion, and they seem to be saying, "Hey, let's go." And we know that we see at least one of them in Nibelheim later. So that was an interesting thing. Once we actually get into Sector 7, though, there was a bunch of cool character moments. We got to see more Roche, we got to see more Kyrie, we got to see some, interesting stuff. We got to see more of Avalanche, Wedge and Jesse. We got to fight them in Fort Condor. But one thing I'm definitely going to bring attention to is our boy Stamp.
Yeah.
What did you think? What was your takeaway of the Stamp slideshow that the Leaf House lady gave the children?
I actually didn't sit there and watch it. I heard her telling a story about Stamp and like different things about it, but I didn't actually sit there. I grabbed my blue materia and I left. So I was like, yo, fuck these kids. I'm out of here.
I'm interested to hear what you have to say, because I also did not see this, just because I'm planning on going through the game in a much more thorough way very soon. But I know that, like, because I just wanted to fucking enjoy the combat. It was fucking crazy. You should absolutely let me know what's going on. I'm totally fine with spoilers here. What's the detail on the stamps, guys?
Okay, well, the short version, and Clark can correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm doing this from memory, is that the very short story is Stamp decides that he's going to please his commander by going to the best bakery in town and getting a loaf of bread. And on the way back, he bumps into a Moogle who is looking for a loaf of bread. So Stamp gives the bread to the Moogle, and the Moogle is very happy, and Stamp knows that he's done the right thing. And when he goes back to his commander, the commander says, "Yes, you did the right thing." So that's the story. And my theory is that it just about confirms that Stamp is Cloud.
Yeah.
Because the loaf of bread is, again, correct me if I'm wrong, I understood this as a baguette, which is also in French called a baton. So Stamp is literally passing the baton onto a Moogle. The Moogle, of course, being Yuffie's hat. So Stamp is effectively I think basically what this is, the purpose of this story is to establish that Stamp is Cloud, because Cloud is the main character of the remake story.
Mm-hmm.
And for Stamp to pass the baton to the Moogle is basically saying, okay, you're now the main character for the DLC.
Oh shit, I like that. I like that a lot.
That was my exact takeaway, and I'm glad you agree. I've been itching to hear if anybody else has one.
So Zach is the Yorkie.
That's 100% now. There's no fucking denying that. If they're both the same, like the same animal, same thing, different moments, that's 100%. Like it was mostly speculation, right? And there was a lot of speculation revolving around that, but we never had official confirmation of that. So now that's way clearer of a line, there's a lot to answer.
About to start researching beagles. Beagles are technically bloodhounds, right?
Yeah.
So, and what do we think about chapter 1?
I really enjoyed it. There's one other thing just to sort of point out about that is, do you remember was it the escape room? Right. The Audrey went to, and was it as part of the escape room? What is it that you got the little brochures, or she got the brochures from?
The brochures were part of the concert.
Oh, was it? Of course, it was the concert, right? Okay, so basically, as part of that, there was like a 4-panel stamp thing where one stamp is eating the crisps, and he's hiding behind a curtain for the other stamp, and they kind of it says something along the lines of, "Yeah, of course, you're not the real stamp." Like the two stamps actually speak to each other. And my takeaway from that was, well, that's just a take on Cloud's broken psyche.
I agree with that.
So, like the real actual, like the start of chapter 8, when Cloud helps himself to his feet, sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like where it's the real Cloud talking to the broken Cloud. Like that's exactly what I took from the stamp thing. And again, what we see in intermission almost completely confirms that, in my opinion.
Interesting. Okay, so I don't want to get there yet, but let's hold on to that thought. So just we'll go person to person here. And do you have any like closing thoughts about chapter 1, specifically of intermission, and Blitz?
Sure. So I loved it, but it honestly didn't go the direction I thought it was going to go in, which was very surprising. I knew that we would interact with the other members of Avalanche and Jesse and them, but I thought that there was going to be a little bit more as far as like the current style of Avalanche, like us learning more about them and talking with them just a little bit right after, especially after the factory segment. But overall, I was loving the return to one of my favorite chapters in Remake is chapter 3, when you get to explore the slums and like go around with Tifa and do side missions and stuff.
Right,
I love that. I love the music, the setting, and it's just a lot of fun for them to take an area that was just one screen and turn it into basically a hub. The players like hub to be like, their houses there and stuff like that. So I loved returning back to it as Yuffie and seeing all these familiar characters we all know interacting with Roche, and I think Roche is my favorite part about that. He is so exaggerated and animated. I absolutely love it, because like when we last saw Roche in Remake, he was more serious with his like battle against Cloud and stuff.
Yeah,
but like this time we see him and he's just like batshit crazy all over the wall, like screaming out loud, "Oh, where is my friend?"
Yeah, I love that he got the friend dynamic with Cloud. Like he's like, "Oh, he's my friend." Like I just love that characterization of him. Kyrie too.
You could tell Austin Lee Matthews was so bursting to tell everyone about this as well.
Oh, I know.
God, yeah.
Oh, I know.
My God, bless him.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, a lot of great a lot of great fan service with Roche, and like talking to Kyrie. I thought it was funny interacting with her as Yuffie, because there was a big group of people on Reddit when we first saw Kyrie last year that they thought that she was Yuffie.
Right.
And so it's funny seeing them like interact with each other and just be like bratty towards one another, and it's just such a great chapter to like, I felt like chapter 1 was just like, oh, here's like, you're returning back to like, sector 7, it's hitting you in the feels, you're enjoying every single minute of it. Then like, it ends and we move on to chapter 2, where it's more serious, more grounded, and they're trying to focus on getting stuff done. And I loved it. I thought it was a great chapter. I did wish that we did see a little bit more as far as like, the other cell of Avalanche and like things to do after we return back to it. But all in all, I still enjoyed it.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of chapter, I didn't want to just bring this little detail. And it's one of those things I don't think that anybody's like mentioned yet, or I haven't heard. So this is kind of exclusive info. Now, so they have changed some dialogue in the main game, and how this relates is in Sector 5 now. There are references to, "Is it time for Stamp's adventures yet?" is a line that the NPCs say, talking about the Leaf House story that was, that basically the story we just talked about. So there's references to that story being told now in NPC dialogue, and there's going to be a ton of little.
Is that the kids beside Chadley?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, right. That was actually in the PS4 version.
Oh, really? Well, that's amazing.
I've actually got it on video.
That's amazing.
That's fucking fantastic.
That's so great. That's even better, honestly.
Mind-blowing part.
Yeah.
That they're like, it's coming. It's actually the opposite. It's not a tease for a future of those. It was a tease for... And
we'll have to explore more, because there are obviously some people have already noted differences, not just in like the like music, but like dialogue. Like it's no longer the exotic dress as Tifa's choice. in chapter 2. So there's going to be some differences that I'm sure we're going to notice as things, pop in more. So, I mean, I guess, so let's talk about chapter 2, because we don't have all day. I wish we did. We don't have all day, and we're hitting the 2-hour mark. So we'll hit chapter 2, round the ending, and then do audience questions. This is the format of our show.
Just very quickly before you move on, what about Fort Condor? Are we talking about Fort Condor at all?
Sure. Let's talk about Fort Condor.
Fuck Chadley.
Right. Well, there were two quick things I wanted to sort of mention about that. One of my favourite Easter eggs in the entirety of Intermission is that the models in Fort Condor are based on OG Final Fantasy VII. I think that's amazing.
Yeah.
Also, one of the big things that we all predicted in advance seems to have come true, with Chadley saying at the end that Fort Condor was designed to try and tap into military strategies that the public could come up with for Fort Condor, which obviously in the old game is Shinra are trying to attack it.
Right.
So when Yuffie beats Chadley, he says, like, you've shown, like, you've basically taught us how to do this, which then sets the scene for part 2 of are we going to see a situation where Yuffie is responsible for what's going on with Shinra attacking Fort Condor, and is that where Yuffie's going to be introduced?
I think so. I was almost going to bring that up. I will bring it up a little bit more. I kind of started a little script on that, and because we've talked about, like, are we going to see Fort Condor in part 2, and does this mean that we're not? And the basic idea that I came up with the last time you were on the show, Mo, it's crowdsourcing a strategy to beat the insurgents. And Chadley essentially confirmed that. I'm glad you picked up on that.
Yeah, so that I took that away. And the last other wee bit was, I'm delighted they didn't use the Whispers, but there's obviously a Whispers reference as well in there as well. I thought that was pretty cool. It was a good way of doing it. So
for reference, what he's saying is that in chapter 1, if you try and approach Seventh Heaven as Yuffie, you will get pushed back from the door, and it's the Whispers that are pushing you back. But what Yuffie will respond with, one of the things is, his ways are a mystery. And part of the subtle dialogue that you hear a lot of characterizations of this, is it establishes that there is a seemingly monotheistic religion in Wutai, probably centered around Dachau. And that's the him that she's probably referencing, not Sephiroth, as insane fan theories from noted Twitter personalities have suggested.
You know what it does sort of softly confirm too is that since we haven't seen a single Whisper in Yuffie's DLC, is that everything happening here is canon. That there's nothing interrupting.
Well, we don't see any of the Whisper interactions that would be worrisome until after, though. Like all, like we see her before and after the event. And we know nothing about what she's gone through between. Anyways, well, that's a whole other thing. We'll get there in the ending. We'll get there in the ending.
Yeah,
I thought chapter 1 was absolutely amazing. I actually spent about 80% of my time on Intermission in chapter 1, but it was pretty mad that, like, if you wanted to rush through it, there was a pretty decent pace to it. But if you wanted to do the side quests, it was like 2 very distinct halves of very slow. And, when you obviously got to the shipping factory, it was, from there on, it was really quick. So it was, I kind of found the pacing a wee bit jarring. But that was just because I was trying to look at every single corner the way that you do, Clark.
Yeah.
But I loved it. I thought it was fantastic.
Yeah, fully agree. Okay, so moving on to chapter 2. Chapter 2 was a heavy chapter. Right off the bat, we're in Shinra HQ. Like we walk straight into the door, and then just take the elevator, which pretty nuts that you could even do that. Just take an elevator, but that is how it all goes down. The interactions with Scarlet are just top notch in that elevator, and then the actual, that's where the gameplay starts to get interesting and fun. I'm curious to know what kind of details and stuff that you guys thought, and so I'll let you guys just kind of talk amongst yourselves, figure that out. What do you think? Chapter 2.
I was kind of annoyed they didn't take the stairs.
Honestly, I think that was the part where I personally started having issues with like the presentation of the story. But I've since sort of like come to terms with some of those things. But I think it was something that Blitz mentioned just in passing about the Avalanche not being like very vital in chapter 1, which was something that I also noticed about chapter 1, is that, and I wasn't 100% keen on like nitpicking the game as I was going through it because I was just enjoying it so much the first time.
Right.
Anybody else really was doing that. I just had a lot of preconceptions is what I'm saying going into it. And it was around that time where I started sort of criticizing the pace of the story a little bit. Is like, as you kind of said, MJ, where there's like there's a very distinct difference of how you can play chapter 1 and enjoy that part, and how much you can get out of it very much is determined by how much time you decide to spend doing like a lot of side quests.
Very true.
And I wasn't upset. I'm not upset by that. What I'm more upset about is that it was the transitions through these moments that was starting to feel a little almost jarring to a degree. But at the end of the day, and I'm just to finish that thought just for the entirety of the game, I don't think that is an issue to me now, more so because I feel like it would have extended a lot to give reason for each and every segment. But I do not like the fact that they just like walked into the door. It kind of is subtly avoided, or I guess the plot significance of it, or the story significance of it, is that Scarlet knows right away that they shouldn't be there. She's like, these people stick out like a sore thumb. They're Wutai. We're gonna trap them. Like
maybe that's why I don't trust Avalanche that much, because those IDs had to have been that good for them to just say, "Oh, materia researcher," and she just walks in, shows her ID, and they just let her walk up the door.
Yeah.
Like, well, they only did, it seems like, to just say like, "Well, we're gonna like trap you if you don't." The fact that they came in like just looking, the Moogle disguise I could pass off as like, okay, she looks a little bit like a clown, right? She's just going around. She's sort of in disguise. But if you walk into Shinra HQ, like what happens in the original when they walk into Shinra HQ? Everybody freaks the fuck out. Like they start running from you. And this, everyone, I guess, is just too preoccupied by standing in line to notice that there are literally Wutai people inside of the building. And I was like, it feels like they were just rushing through that part to just get to the next part. And I didn't
definitely. And it's not even on the inside. Obviously, like they show the same way that the forecourt of the building is just sort of teeming with soldiers when you go there in chapter 16 in Remake, and they show the same level of soldiers outside the Shinra building.
Right.
Like, how did you even get past them? Never mind, like, into the building and into the elevator. I agree that it's very much a case of how quickly can we just set up the rest of the plot and just sort of bypass this issue. I think of the entirety of the story, that's the bit that I was least. And the same thing with Yuffie getting back out again. She just fucking runs through.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. I was like, how the fuck is she getting in and out of this place? Like, at all? Like,
I mean, I think it's one. We're just going to have to assume that the Whispers are doing this again, because it's just it's too mad, too mad.
Such a great plot device. Wait, how did they do it? The Whispers?
The Whispers.
Don't question it.
I'm sure like a lot of people love an answer for a plot device element. I think that there's a lot of that in chapter 2 that I sort of overlook for the simple fact that I'm sort of giving them the benefit of the doubt because just to briefly go over chapter 2, like my experience with it is that I loved every minute of it because it really started to turn the knob on ramping up the flow of the story. Like aside from what we just mentioned, as soon as we're in Deep Ground, or sorry, like that facility, that Scarlet's facility and all of that up until like the Nero fight at the end of the game, like the game is just pushing you forward and the momentum of it is so strong that I completely forgive it for like the minor speed bumps of the story. But like I wanted to, and this is the only thing I really want to talk about other than Nero, is pain level max. Like the flow of the music in that fight and the flow of the enemy, and then every segment it's just like pain level max. I'm like, I'm being conditioned right now to love this game to a degree. Like it does such a good job of putting you in that space to really enjoy the ride, and I love it to death.
I totally agree. And what I think we're obviously sitting here, like, as you say, being conditioned to pain level max, thinking that max is maximum. But what if they're actually talking about Max Dude and his response to the remake?
It's just like, what have you done, Max?
Yeah, like
done, Max, dude.
Remake ending pain level Maximilian Dude.
He needs that. Somebody get on from his marketing team.
Yeah, and tell him it came here first, and then he'll and he'll join us after.
Yeah, come talk to us, Max.
Yeah. Seriously, we'll be down.
We've got a lot of opinions about your opinions.
Yeah.
Yep.
I like opinions.
Yeah. I really enjoy his opinions. I must admit. I do enjoy them.
Same.
I do too. And also, he's super stoked for this game, and I love it. I love how excited and
absolutely
open
he beat it last night for the first time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, first complete run.
And then he tried to, and he was like, "Oh, I'm going to try Vice." And then he realized that it was his main. It was that Cloud and Co fight him. He's like, "Oh, I guess not," because he's yet to actually beat the game in hard mode or even play it in hard mode. So he's going to go through that first, and then he also hasn't gone through intermission in hard mode either. So Top Secrets was out of the equation for him. So
the man has amazing restraint.
I know. I was thinking the same thing. I was like,
I think he's also got an amazing amount of scheduling conflicts.
Yeah,
he's got a lot of games he's got to play. But yeah, absolutely. So I'm somewhat of the same mind, but like highlights of chapter 2 before the ending, for me personally, was, I really liked just even getting a little bit of a better look at, President Shinra talking to Reeve again and Heidegger again. And, that was a fun, like, little intro, but like just in general, Scarlet was so good. She was such a standout character. I really they just made her, God, you just want to punch her so bad. And I'm really hoping what this means is that, when we get to, the sister Ray and there's the fight, that it's not just gonna be Tifa anymore. I'm hoping that we see a full blown Tifa.
What about a Roach fight? What about a Roach sort of fight? Just Cloud and Roach. Why not just Tifa and Scarlet at that point?
Yeah,
because Yuffie has a stake in the game now.
Oh, I guess you're right. But she also comes in as the reporter, so maybe there's something more set up with that.
Yeah, that's true.
Did you catch that reference with the reporters and Scarlet? With Yuffie running about?
Yes.
Is the Junon thing?
That's exactly where my mind went.
One of my favorite details of the chapter 2 is that the IDs, although it's shown in chapter 1, the ID clearly says Yuffie Kisaragi or Kisarigi, and that's so bold. Use your actual last name, the last name of Godo, on your ID, and just expect nothing to go wrong.
That's what I'm saying, man. Rufus is he's deep into that Avalanche stuff. He definitely made those IDs legit.
Yeah.
Or
do you know
the
what
mayor did.
Oh yeah.
Like
Yeah.
there's a really really deep lore connection that I would like to think is there. I think it's actually just a coincidence, but I'd like to think. See if you look at the two IDs.
Mm-hmm.
One is just access to the building. It's not access to the building. Sorry, one's access to the train to get to Sector Zero, and the other one is for the actual materia research. And if you look at the images on the two of them, they change slightly. One's got like a wee ribbon, or a tie or something. Which might connect to. Do you remember the thing from the early material files about Yuffie being a bounty hunter and her appearance changing depending on the last poster you read? I wonder, like, I know that's really, really, really abstract, but I wonder if that's a connection.
Not a bad theory.
Yeah.
So there you go. One thing that I'm not necessarily looking to rub it in your faces because it's not a big of a deal, but
This is good. Good start.
Like, is every time I watch one of your shows and you guys, like both of you, kind of say when they get to deep ground. Last time I was on, I was like, they don't fucking go to deep ground. Like, deep ground comes to them. Like, that's what I'm reading out of this, and I was so happy I was right. Because it didn't make any sense in my mind that they would go to deep ground.
I was under the assumption that that segment of them going to Shinra was not Shinra. I don't know why. I thought it was like the underground facility underneath Sector 7 after Plate Falls, and we would see her go and like, not save Wedge, but like move his body deeper into deep ground. But now it's just they didn't even do any of that. Well, actually, there is a I guess a gap towards the end that could have taken place, but I guess we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, there's still like so much of that entire, like, that story is just not. I think, and
because after the Plate Falls, are we to believe Yuffie didn't go down and check out the aftermath, or did she just like straight up leave?
With her, dude. I think that was.
So yeah, that's so okay. We've already kind of covered Nero. We love Nero. Nero was great. They did great with Nero.
Well, just one very. Can I get Sleepezi's opinion?
You absolutely cannot yet, please? Because at the end of this you can. Okay, but other than that, we do need to talk about the actual interaction between Nero and Vice. So we do need to talk about that, and then we'll take the thing that you wanted Sleepezi's take on. Then we'll talk about the end of the chapter, not the ending of the chapter. So Nero and Vice, they had this conversation. It was very weird. But
I hate to say it, but that was probably like the worst way to introduce those characters. I think it was good for me. I liked it. Like, I see, like, it fills gaps that I liked. I did not like if that was me first going through the game, having never played Dirge of Cerberus, I would have been like, what the fuck am I watching? Like, I would have had no fucking clue. Like, I think it was, again, there's this, it's DLC storytelling. That's how I'm going to refer to it now, where it's just like, we need to keep this momentum up. And I totally get it. And it's totally a forgivable thing. You have a lot to get through, a lot to introduce, and they packed so much into the DLC already that I don't want to fault them for it. But in terms of storytelling, terrible way to introduce characters that are already very, like, from the perspective of a lot of players going in being like, I fucking hate Deep Ground, or I don't know anything about Deep Ground. Like, we don't know anything about these guys. Like, you're just assuming that we're going to know. Or
well, do you know what? I 100% agree with you in terms of storytelling. That it's a shocking way to introduce such important characters. But I think they realised that shortly before release. Yeah. And I think that's why Nero is in the last trailer, because it gave everyone the opportunity to go and work out who they were.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point.
I just don't like that form of like, hey, you got to go do some more research. Yeah. Like, you have to, like, I'm very self-aware of the fact that I have literally like stared at a screen for a year and a half and have studied literally everything that there is to look at and talk to like people like you, MJ, who have been like doing this. Like I have bathed in the blood of the compilation. And it's just so much work to do that. That is not how I want any story to be told. I want you to feel like you can walk into any story, learn to love it, and not be sure why you like it, and then go in. You know what I mean? Like, there has to be that level of understanding that a character, like, there's a lot that I have to say about this at the end, and because I didn't get to talk about chapter 1 to set it up, but we'll talk about it when we get to like the very, very end. But this is not effective for a wider audience. Right. I think it's very effective for me, who's somebody who knows everything that there could possibly know about it so far. And I'm not saying I'm like the grand fucking master. There are people who've been doing this longer than me. I just that I'm the one who's more important than the viewer. So it's like, I don't want you guys to have to rely on me to enjoy a story. That's like, and I'm talking about to chat. Like, if you don't know about this stuff and you haven't looked into it, you shouldn't have to rely on people like me to know what's going on in a story. Sure. What that immediately tells me is that's not effective storytelling. And there's a lot of that very present. And it was an issue in Remake, and it's definitely an issue here. So I'm not going to come on this and just be like, oh, I loved every fucking second of it. Yeah. I can't say that. I think it's perfect for me. So like I can tell the delineation between, I can separate those two things. So I just wanted to clarify that, and whatever else you want to talk about.
So what was the point you were going to bring up that you wanted Sleepezi to comment on, Mo?
Sleepezi, what is your take on Nero's Red Darkness?
I have a very hard time answering that question because I think I have an association with that color already pre-built in. I don't have a direct answer for you yet.
Were you? How about you, Mo? What were you thinking when you saw it?
When I saw that, I don't actually have an answer either. I think the closest that I could really come to it was that it's either a connection to Vincent or it's a connection to Genesis.
You're right. You're absolutely right. That's the one I would put more money on. I think that's a way bigger of a Vincent thing than it is.
I think it was a color association to Dirge of Cerberus, which is a Vincent story that also happens to have Genesis before we knew his name.
Back when he was jacked. But it is kind of, it's one of these. Oh right, going to go off a total tangent here just because it's I've just remembered. Do you remember the Chaos Gene issue?
That's exactly where I'm going to. We're on the same page here.
Okay, Chaos Gene is actually mentioned in Dirge of Cerberus. Shalua says it.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so remember we had the conversation of, holy shit, the World Preview book has just thrown in a total lore mystery.
It's in
as in the original game. Okay, so that was my tangent, right? So back to the actual point. I'm hopeful that it's not one of these sort of mad lore things that they mention it once and that's it. Sort of Nomura negative live stream-esque.
Right.
So I'm hopeful that at some point they might sort of elaborate on why Nero's darkness changes colour. Or at least just come out and point blank say, yes, it's just a colour association with Vincent or Genesis or Dirge of Cerberus in general. But it really kind of threw me. I totally agree with what he said. I thought the Nero scene was so haunting. The music was so haunting. Mm-hmm. Like the wee sort of when he's treating that Deep Ground Soldier like a puppet.
Right.
You know, like the wee sort of marionette is so fucking creepy. It's unreal.
Uh-huh.
I was sold immediately at that point.
And like that is incredible. I'm sold. I was sold in Nero anyway, but you've 100% sold me on him for remake. And then they threw in the red darkness. I'm just like, oh, fuck's sake! Like, here you
Why are you
go.
doing this to me?
Yeah.
Can I'm gonna say now that I've had like a few seconds to think about.
Yeah.
I really think that, and this is 100% speculation. I think you're right about the Chaos Gene. I almost think that Nero might be a suggestion for where Vincent's gameplay might go. I think the life drain, all of those moves that we see depicted in that, I think could be very beneficial to adding more depth to Vincent's combat and sort of like specialize him maybe. Just because for those who don't know lore-wise, Chaos is a not necessarily classified as a weapon, but sort of similar in vein to one, where it has a function of the planet to gather corruption from souls. That's like the very bare minimum explanation. The only thing you have to really know is that Nero and Vincent have those similarities because Vice is the opposite half of this force, which is Omega. And since Nero and Vice are brothers, Vincent's labeled as Chaos in the game of Dirge of Cerberus. Nero and Vincent have extreme similarities. So like in Dirge of Cerberus, like he has red eyes like Vincent. Like things like that. Subtle things, very similar kind of design almost without like the wrapping. Yeah. The point that I'm trying to make here is that what I would say, have a good one, Blocks.
Yeah, thank you for stopping by.
But yeah, I think that connection that you're making with the Chaos Gene, I think is something that not only I think would probably be really well featured in that, but like even the movement, right? It's like we know Vincent can move around like through like that cape-like jumping around sort of thing in AC. Like we see Nero kind of teleporting around in a very like similar way. I think that they're going to make direct connections to Nero's moveset is all I'm going to say.
Yeah.
To what we see in Vincent's character. I'm calling it like 100% right now.
I would love that.
We talk about how brutally he murdered Sonon too?
Oh my god! Yeah,
it was too fucking much for me, dude.
See the hands at the end when he takes his face and pulls him back.
Yeah,
God.
By the face.
Yeah. He loved it.
Yeah,
that's what I love about Nero. He was loving every second he was on screen, and I fucking loved it.
Do you know what? I and Sleepezi will sort of, I assume, will agree with me on this one. There's a part in Dirge of Cerberus, and I think it's Yuffie, when Yuffie is taken into Nero's darkness, and Vincent rescues her. He asks Yuffie what it felt like, and she says something along the lines of, "It felt like all the happiness and like, all the joy has been sucked out."
Yes.
Right, and then you see Sonon inside the darkness. Yeah. And Melfi comes to greet him and gives him the Dachau bean, and he bites it and realizes he's no longer a ninja. So the darkness is taken away his identity, and that's why the way that the Yuffie had her joy and her happiness taken away while she was in the darkness is now taking away the happiness and joy from, or even getting to see Melfi again. It's taken that away from Sonon, which I felt was a very, very powerful, like that was, other than the hands-on face thing, that was almost the worst thing you could do. Like, this character's about to die, so what we're going to do is strip him of his identity just before they do it.
And just to mention that the Chow Bean that you just mentioned, and something I didn't catch the first time I watched it, is that he can't eat it. He doesn't have the Wutai jaw. He doesn't bite through the bean. He tries to bite it and is like, "Oh, I can't." And then he. But
that is specified earlier on that it's ninjas. It's only ninjas that can do it. So it's not a Wutai thing. It's a ninja thing. So by him not being able to chew it, he is no longer a ninja, and therefore Nero has stripped him of his identity.
Sort of like how like memories and all those things that he was reliving sort of fade away, almost like the thing that he's made of might have some sort of memory basis
It was hella sad, man. Because like, I mean, friggin' Nero like penetrates this dude, goes through him, goes back through
Thank
him
you,
the other
Blitz.
side, explodes inside of him, and does all this.
Oh,
It's completely,
behave yourself.
it's so messed up how he just completely destroys this man. I felt so bad.
Yeah, he destroys it.
Oh,
Fucking
jeez.
excited now.
He's most definitely going to be using his body in some way.
Yeah, that body is his wonderland now.
Yeah.
So
I mean, no, I mean like quite literally against like
No.
Yuffie, like in the future. Like if
Yeah,
Yuffie
he'll
and
come
him come
back.
across each other, she'll probably make him fight like Sonon, and it's gonna be like a
sure,
that-
sure, yeah.
The
It's gonna
fact
be
that
bomb
they even
segment.
mention like any sort of like follow up to that, and people being like, "Oh, we won't see Deep Ground again." It's like, no, that scene right there sort of indicates that this isn't over. Whatever just happened is not just, oh, here's a character death. I actually like. I hate to say it, but MJ, you completely changed my mind about that scene. I'm gonna say like I was like, this is like the fucking Lord of the Rings, Return of the King of death scenes, of endings. Like this guy will not fucking just die and like go away. Like I get it. Like he's dead. I was sad the first like 2 times he was stabbed, and then they proceed to stab him like 2 more times in like the like occurring of like 5 minutes after, and I was just like, Jesus Christ, dude, just get off screen. But like all of that I was looking at, and I was like, I don't see the significance of this just yet. And I think your recognition of it in that way completely changes my mind of it from a lore perspective. I think this is a problem. I think I'm not going to linger on this too long. I'm sorry. I'm fucking talking way too much during this fucking podcast. I think a lot of this we have to come back to once the game is done.
Yeah.
That's what is troubling me in the back of my mind is that there's a lot of things that I will look back on that I recognize now, even, right? Like the whole Juji thing. It's like, oh, we'll save that for later. Like we'll get into that later. Like I think a lot of this is a bigger chess game. And I think if it's Nomura and fucking Kingdom Hearts level of like, didn't see that shit coming, like this is all in place for some reason. We just don't know what that is yet.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, like, do you know what? I haven't said all that. I thought the death scene in terms of the level of cruelty and the level of creepiness, it was incredible, except for one bit. And it's the sound that Sonon's face makes when it hits the ground.
yeah, and his butt's just sticking up. I was like, the same thing. I was like, oh man, this guy's been humiliated, dude. Just like
I was like,
said, dude.
I was like, on my live when that happened, I was like, bro, why they gotta make him die like that? Come on,
Yeah.
seriously, you gonna kill him in that position?
I wonder, and someone with a bit more cultural knowledge might be able to correct me on this, but killing him while he's on his knees is what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of disrespect.
Yeah,
sort of thing.
disrespectful. Yeah,
Dishonorable. Yeah, dishonorable. That's maybe the way I'm going. So that's maybe a Japanese cultural thing as well.
Right.
And we kind of spoke about I think last time I was on, or maybe a different conversation about the pinwheel in Melfi's hair.
I was just
Right.
about to, goddamn.
So that's a Japanese cultural thing as well. So I wonder if it's all connected.
Wouldn't be surprised at all. Definitely wouldn't be surprised. Now, I do want to take a moment to say this is the most watched stream I've had ever. So thank you all for being here.
Wow.
I'm sure you're here for all the sweet lore. And there's been a lot of sweet lore. Regarding Sonon's fate, I think we can all agree that was the least surprising thing ever.
Yeah.
But about how the actual game ended, right? So the reflection of Vincent and or Kate Sith and or Rebel was fairly disconfirmed. And essentially the game ends at Yuffie, like the part that we know what's going on with Yuffie ends right at Platefall. So there's still a bunch of time that we don't really get to understand what happened. So they intentionally left that open. And I kind of mentioned this earlier, where one of the things we thought they might address is things like what happens to how does Wedge get moved to deep ground? What happens after Platefall? In other words, like who saves Blitz or who saves Biggs? Who does all this stuff?
Yeah, who does?
Who does all this stuff? And not only does that stuff not get addressed, it gets sort of purposefully skipped. And the next scene after Platefall, she's outside of Midgar. Yuffie's outside of Midgar, and we have no idea what the timing is. So I thought that was if there was any jarring pacing choice for me, that was it. And I got over it.
For me, if I'm going to be honest, it's that transition that really didn't sit well with me.
And they could have literally put any scene in between that, but it was literally the next cut. So, like, if they put any transitional scene, it probably wouldn't have bothered me as much. Literally anything. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely. I'll mention it at the end. I'll let everybody else have their turn.
Yeah, I agree. I wanted to see a little bit more, just a little bit more. Maybe another scene of her like walking through the rumble torn Sector 7 area, or like seeing different pieces of the area that she was like she visibly was like standing by, and now it's like reduced to like destruction and chaos. I would have loved to see that, but it literally switched from a horrible, fiery, blazing death of a sector of a city to her in the wastelands, like with sunshine and happy her humming the Chocobo theme. So I would like to know, like, well, how much time is that? Obviously, it's like it could either be the next day or could be a couple days from then. Like, that's as well as where it felt like it was pushed a little too quickly for my taste. I thought we were gonna get a little bit more out of that.
Yeah, I agree. I must admit that I was sort of weirdly enough. I think it was Nomura said, or he confirmed a couple of months ago, that Vice was not going to be the last boss.
Mm-hmm.
And for some reason, I also had it in my mind that Nero was not going to be the last boss.
Yeah, me
because
too.
I think there was sort of this weird introduction of the diabolic creation. So I thought, okay, well that maybe makes a bit more sense, that there's whatever happens after Nero would introduce the diabolic creation, and this will be the sort of secret thing we've all been waiting for. And then, of course, you fight the diabolic creation and then Nero.
Yeah.
At which point my mind went to, okay, now I'm really hopeful that the last section of the game is going to be similar to what Sleepezi theorized, that, whatever the situation is, perhaps, like, Sonon's now dead, Yuffie's on her own, everything's gone wrong, she needs to get in this bloody elevator. What if the elevator goes straight to President Shinra's office and Yuffie encounters the Sephiroth clone, which then ties into why the Sephiroth clones are wandering about in Chapter 1. So at that point, I was like, what if Yuffie actually has to fight Sephiroth in the President's office? How mad would that be? And then, of course, within 30 seconds, I'm seeing a fucking Chocobo.
Yeah. That was the level of...
So it was like a mega anticlimax, which is why I said at the start of the show, Sleepezi ruined Intermission for me. with his much better story.
Yeah, I hate to say it, but that was general. Like, I talked to Clark about it right after I had finished the game, and I was like super. I went on. I bitched about that ending for maybe like 2 hours, like afterwards on stream, just because it wasn't like. And Clark was mentioning to me, it might have been my preconceptions. I genuinely think that part is just bad storytelling. I genuinely think that that's just bad storytelling, and you can't. Mm-hmm. It can't be shrugged off.
The DLC storytelling, right?
Right. Exactly. Blitz. That's exactly the term. That it is DLC storytelling, and I'm not saying that you defended it, but for me, having come back to it even after sort of like stripping away some preconceptions, it's not even the fact that I wanted them, like, it could have ended anywhere else. they didn't have to go to Shinra's office. They didn't have to use the fucking deep ground elevator. They didn't have to get away on a helicopter. Like, none of that matters. It mattered to me that the character had arrived at the place that the entire game was building her up to be. Is that Yuffie started out, and it was as I sort of predicted, and it's not like that crazy of a prediction, but like the prediction is that she starts off innocent at the beginning of the story, and that innocence is stripped away, and there's now her in place of wanting to do something about all of the destruction and sort of like just the convoluted nature of like what is the right thing to do. And it starts off that way is that she is like the superhero. Right? She has this mentality of herself is that I'm like a hero. I'm here. I'm going to do this thing, and I'm going to go and fight the bad guys. And then at the end of it, like Sonnen gets literally just fucked up in front of her. And I will say this is that her reaction to his death is actually all I needed from the story perspective. She like kudos to the fucking voice actor.
Her voice was breaking her
fucking down.
Perfect.
And we're gonna raid her after this, by the way.
Okay, good. But it was just excellent. And then this is what the entire DLC was building up to is that this character is gonna transform in front of our eyes right now, and she needs to confront that. Or I need to see the direction. And right at the peak of that moment where a character is at its lowest, they literally skip the resolution of that character arc. And then we just see her fine going to Com or wherever the fuck. And I was just thinking to myself, that is such a letdown. That is such a letdown.
Just to jump in here, right? You've actually just raised something that's made me think. I had an idea earlier on today that I'd kind of noted down for my my wee Easter egg series. And the idea was that Yuffie is at the age of 16. Okay, so she's the main character of the DLC is 16. Cloud is the main character of the remake. Now, Cloud is, because of what happened to him, because he's lost his memory for the last 5 years, technically speaking, he's the mental maturity of a 16-year-old, which means the two of them are technically speaking around the same age. Now, Cloud's trauma obviously meant that and everything that went on afterwards with the experimentation and whatnot means that he's lost his memory, and his identity when he re-emerges from that at the time of remake is different to what he actually was when the trauma happened. And I don't think it's actually a surprise, and you talking about this has just put this into my mind, that it's perhaps the trauma that's caused that. It's Yuffie's mental reaction to this is she can't deal with it to the extent that she's just blocked it out, which is why we see her on the back of the chocobo, kind of just right. Okay, we're back to amazing Yuffie again. I've had a couple of issues, but now you're going to join my team, which is, like the OG. Like, she does come across as very cocky, but anyone paying attention will see that there's a huge amount of insecurity there, sort of young girl insecurity. And I think this is just what it is, that this level of trauma has created a situation where she has redefined her identity of, I'm now a very insecure person. I'm just not going to deal with what happened to me in Midgar.
Yeah, an avoidant person.
Yeah.
It almost reeks of avoidance personality disorder. I fully agree. And so, okay, we are rounding the corner here. So I do want to talk about the ending. And so to start that off, I'm actually going to show the ending right now. And so we're going to watch that, and it's 6 minutes. And then, so there's major spoilers. So here's the ending of Final Fantasy VII Remake Intermission.
Don't think I can do this alone. The amazing Yuffie wants you. Join her team and the sky's the limit.
Can they hear us?
Yes. So we can, you know, point out little details, but just don't talk over dialogue.
Yeah. I can't hear both. Oh, I guess I can watch the stream.
Hey, Barrett. Were you really walking
I can't
the
hear
whole
it
way?
in our stream.
Yep.
So. I don't know.
Yeah,
Cole's still
I
pretty
can't
far,
hear it, so
though,
I'm
isn't
going
it?
to nip or
Another
just
full
go
day,
silent.
give or take.
Question. When my mom says a full day, she means from the time you get up in the morning till the time you go to bed. But for me, it means from the time you get up in the morning all the way through till the time you get up the next morning. So, which is it for you?
Gotta go with Elmira on that one.
I actually really like this.
That's a relief.
I really like just the
Is
like
it, though?
characterization, like this is a
Bet you've had to hoof it from sun up
A
to sundown
teaser for the
tons of
new
times. This is all
kind of
just
interactions
same
we're
old,
gonna
same
see.
old, right?
That's right.
like this is the new energy with the
Even
crew.
so, we're all gonna need to stop and rest.
No, that's perfect.
Especially you.
Nothing about the
Yeah,
dynamic
yeah,
of the
I know.
characters is an issue.
Anyway,
I think it's actually the only really like something that just seems unwavering
That's comforting.
through remake and
Of course it is.
intermission. It's the characters and them just
Alright,
expanding on
everyone,
them.
let's stop
That
here
makes
for a
it so
minute.
worth it.
Leader's orders.
So
Also,
this,
the music
Now
in this
breathe
trailer.
in that fresh
yeah,
air.
On
I
our way.
That's right.
Actually,
So,
scratch
which
that.
Midgar is that?
Definitely
It's
the
the
one-
right one.
that-
Save it for
New
later,
timeline, old timeline,
when we're not so close to
Yuffie
Midgar.
timeline.
I see a terrier
This
somewhere
is
in the
the
background there in the
city
cloud.
logo.
Enter
so-
right. Okay. Well, let's. Okay. So see, what? Who is this eagle? Who is this Sonon?
I think it's just the Fort Conda reference coming
Yeah.
to a close.
Maybe.
That was my interpretation. Is like this
It's a
is
very
the
different
Phoenix
bird.
Yeah.
reborn.
As
I love this scene so much.
yeah. See. When I first saw the driver, I was like,
Like
that's
this? Yep.
that's amazing. He's everything I wanted.
Yeah, he really is.
But he looks as if he's in disguise. So it's like it genuinely looks as if he's not.
No way,
That's not
a
his normal
car.
dress sense. He's just like to the point where I thought this better not be Zack dressed up as a hillbilly or something.
Barrett must have a lot of Phoenix Downs to go ahead and do that.
I'm not even sure who would win in that fight between the truck and Barrett, to be honest. He's a big boy.
I was really disappointed that Red doesn't have any dialogue here.
That was one thing I actually forgot. That,
I think
like,
I think Max Middleman is recording One Punch season 3.
Is there a difference between? I guess they
Well,
just.
Bill was like, "Nah, you could bump into me anytime."
Yeah.
Wouldn't that
Okay,
just
here. Okay, I would say let's stay quiet for this part.
Okay.
Look at that.
Yeah, Sector
Where's
6.
a roof when you need one?
I agree.
Gonna be okay?
Should be, but weird. My stomach's in knots.
That's its way of telling you it's hungry. Let's move.
It's been a while, huh? Long time no see. How you been? Listen, Hey. I'm back! Aerith?
So, guys, what do we all think?
Was that Zach? Oh my god, was that Zach? Holy fuck! How did you get that ending? So crazy. That's not
hard mode only.
Hard mode only. Wow. I'm just gonna say my piece. I don't care where they're gonna take Zach necessarily at this point. I think they've sold me on the fact that they can handle the elements that I distrust them or any other storyteller to handle, just because of the way that they handled the other compilation elements so far. I've sort of like, even though I still am worried, I just keep telling myself, well, they really did this the way I enjoyed it. And I think I saw every good intention in that. And I really trust that. As far as the ending is concerned, I think the only thing that really resonates with me about any of it is the characterization. Like Zach is like the way he acts in that scene is amazing. You can not like the timeline thing, but just the way this character is being represented is to a T. Like, not only it's not, what's shocking about it is that it's just, all of it's just better. It just keeps getting better. It keeps pushing that to such a far line of where these characters can go. Like, the full potential of these characters continues to be realized. And I, like, as somebody who enjoys storytelling, like, that to me is always the hardest part. For me, that's the hardest thing to convey and sell, is like emotion to like an understanding of where these characters are coming from. I don't like Zach as a character necessarily in the compilation either, but like, this game is selling me so fucking hard on this guy that I want to see more of him. I want to see more of him. And I think that it goes for all of the characters. I think that's the biggest takeaway for me is that, like, even though the story has like ups and downs, DLC storytelling, like, I want to see these characters walking around just talking to each other. I don't care. I don't care what they're fucking doing. They could be fighting the Zolom. They could be riding chocobos or riding in the back of a pickup truck. That's it. The only other thing I'll mention is the Sky references are constant in this ending.
So, okay. So that's when you say Sky references, let's just, because we will bring that up probably in terms of theories about the ending. What are you talking about? So in Crisis Core, it's established that the Sky is sort of a representation of like sort of goals and dreams. It's like the soldier honor principle. It's like you have to have dreams and honor. Mm-hmm. And it's essentially put into the context that what the Sky represents for Zach in that game is that this is the limitless potential of like what you can be and what you can do. And Crisis Core sort of frames each character as sort of being constricted to the role that they're assigned. Almost is like Zach is a soldier and he has to follow through with what Shinra wants him to do, and he has to do that thing. Sisane, who's a Turk, is also trapped, and this comes through with the wing imagery with Sephiroth and Angeal and Genesis in that game, which definitely carries over to Remake with Sephiroth's wing, because Sephiroth's wing is made up of whispers, which are the manifestation of what is limiting the party, essentially. Is that the limitation is like your destiny, which is sort of the same. It's just an evolution of what they do in Crisis Core from a storytelling thematic standpoint. And in this game and in Remake,
they constantly reference the sky. So what happens in the ending there is Yuffie says, "Sky's the limit." She points to the sky. She points to the heavens, and she's like, "That's where we're reaching now. We're going past our limits. We're going past like what you know of like my character." And all of the talk about destiny at the end of Remake is like that with Aerith and the party. And then in the ending with Aerith again, in Remake, she says, "I miss it, the steel blue sky," or the steel sky, which she's referencing Midgar. And she's referring to constraint, and the world is limitless outside of that constraint. And she is scared about that. Zack is the exact opposite. He wants that for himself in Crisis Core.
Right, and because the price of freedom steep, etc.
Exactly. Price of freedom is a perfect way to simplify that. But then Aerith references the ceiling again in this ending with "Where's a roof when you need one?" When she's getting rained on. And then
we defeated the roof. We destroyed the roof.
Right, and that's why her stomach is in knots. She's not comfortable with what's happening. Like deep down, she's not comfortable, which is exactly her characterization at the end of Remake, which people were like, anyway.
That's perfect. Okay, so right off the bat, we'll just talk about this. What I liked about this ending is that it is, so first of all, Intermission was the most Remake thing ever, right? It was dead on. It was incredible character moments, amazing combat, weird ending. That was Remake. And that's also Intermission. Dead on. Now, what gets answered here is absolutely nothing. Like, we knew Zack was alive. We've known Zack is alive for a long time. We have no idea where, when, if it's a timeline. We have none of that stuff was answered. So when Nomura said that part 2 would follow intergrade, meaning this was going to be a little bit of a bridge, we all kind of knew that they were going to extend the ending just a little bit and open the door, and they could have gone two directions. They could have either shown, like beyond a shadow of a doubt, that Zack is in fact alive and in play, or explained what was going on with the stamp bag. You know, like, is it an illusion? Is that why there's a terrier? Is it a timeline thing? Is that why stamp is mysteriously different? And they chose the former. They chose not to explain what's going on in terms of timelines, but just in fact confirmed, guys, get ready for Zack. So what they did was brilliant in that it re-shocked us all. Like, we're all like, whoa, this is really happening. But they didn't technically give us even a goddamn shred of new information.
And it's smart.
It's
because
pretty
they want us
smart.
They want us to keep talking about it.
It's pretty smart. So I guess we'll just kind of go over some theories real quick, because, you know, obviously the internet's flooded with them. Max Dude is immediately like, oh, Aerith is dead in Zack's timeline. Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah, I disagree.
I don't think we don't even know if there's multiple timelines or not. We don't know if they're in the same timeline. We don't know any of that.
Maybe she's not even born in this timeline yet.
Right. This could be the past. I mean, you know, there's all sorts of weird.
The church looks completely different to me.
Yeah, the church does look a little different, but so one of the first things that people did was like, "Oh, the plate's wrong. The plate's wrong." I can tell you that the plate's not wrong. Plate's right. Plate's dead right.
Yeah.
There's no. And the other thing to think about is, okay, this is done by Visual Works. It's CG. So Visual Works is a different company, but something interesting is that and so this is just preface information. You guys can go wild with your theories. This preface information. Visual Works, believe it or not, even though they generate the pre-rendered cutscenes, on the actual game files, they show they maintain all the assets that are used in the pre-rendered cutscenes in the game data. So you can actually look at the models used and how they're different in the pre-rendered cutscenes. And there was a good post on Reddit, and I also brought it up earlier, that a lot of the NPCs in the church are just Visual Works NPCs.
Yeah.
Like they're not
There's
actually.
There's one in particular.
Well, there's
little kid,
the kid with the stockings.
Yeah.
Or the purple and yellow flower girl. Did anybody notice that?
The purple and yellow flower girl.
Yeah, did anybody notice the woman wearing a shirt with purple and yellow flowers on it?
No, I didn't.
I didn't see that. No.
It's not significant. I just brought it up because I saw that. I was like, if I say anything about this to any degree, I'm gonna like people are gonna think I'm crazy. But anyway, it's not.
I there was a few things that I picked out of this. So it just were you finishing?
I think we I think we got the gist of it. Is like we didn't see any stamps. We didn't see anything to indicate what timeline this was, and that seems like a very purposeful choice. So I don't think there's. I almost think there's no room for crack pottery at this point.
I don't know about that.
Okay.
So okay.
Which completely disarms the argument because there's one motherfucker over here.
Yeah, there's an absolute beauty of a change in there. I think it's a bit of a misdirection, so I disagree with Max dude. I think that there's nothing here that actually indicates that Aerith is genuinely dead, with the exception of one, and it only happens to be something that is so fleeting that old gamers might even have picked up on it subconsciously, and it's that there's a young boy and girl standing in the flower bed, which is what's happening when you revisit the church in Final Fantasy VII, and they're speaking to Aerith's ghost. So I think that triggers this idea that Aerith is dead, and that everyone's in the church crying, suggestive that Aerith has died. But there's also this idea that the kid with the stockings and the hat is actually on a bike in the opening of the game on the plate.
Right.
So there's, what's the connection there? If Aerith only, to my understanding, and maybe this is something that will come out in the sort of Tale of Two Pasts of where, the connection between Aerith and the rest of the plate, or the connection with Aerith and these people and whatnot. Because there's no immediate connection between that little boy and Aerith selling flowers on the plate. One of the big things, I agree with you that at this point we'd sort of made our peace with the fact that Zach's going to be alive, so the scene itself didn't come as a shock. Mm-hmm. It was more of an interesting point of, okay, what can we actually deduce from this? The big thing for me is that the cross at the back has changed, which this ties into the discussion that you and I had, or at least that you pointed out to me, which I later used in one of my Easter egg videos, is that I'd always been under the impression that the church was built historically, i.e. going back decades, if not centuries, right? But the Material Ultimaria confirms that it was actually built during the time of the plate's construction, which puts it at a point of 30 years ago. Right? Which means that we've actually got two things that we can go on in terms of timeline changes. The first being Terrier Stamp, and the second being the construction of the church with a different cross, which then suggests that the changes to the stamp timeline, or the changes that would come from, or
that would cause
maybe occurred 30 years ago, around the time of the first soldier.
Right.
Which, again, this is pure speculation, but it might tie into like the Ever Crisis story based on First Soldier, of what is different, what actually caused the change 30 years ago. And that's kind of what I took away from this, that there's nothing actually, other than the two kids in the flower bed, there's nothing here to indicate that Aerith is actually dead, only that she's not at the church, because the ending of Crisis Core quite clearly puts her at the church at the time of Zack's death. So Zack not being dead doesn't actually change where Aerith was at that particular time. So we've only got a small window of Zack not dying and actually reaching Midgar a day, half a day, whatever later, and going to the church. So there's not a huge amount of time that's actually passed there. So what jumped out at me was that there's quite the way that they're all sort of sitting around and crying. There's an image from Advent Children Complete of quite a lot of kids and adults lying around in alleyways, suffering from geostigma.
Yeah, you're bringing to attention something that I think is super important that people are not taking away from this from like a thematic standpoint. But I want you to finish your thought before I jump in.
So my thought on this is that what we can take away is that whatever caused the stamp change also caused the changes in the church being built. I also think that Aerith's not dead, but what has happened is the removal of the whispers might have caused something similar to geostigma to arise as well. And yeah, that's what I took away from this.
Can I just briefly just jump off of that and say that this ending is sort of almost the exact inverse of how Advent Children ends? Is that the fight in the background for Zack is the way that he exits the church, and now he's coming back, and rather than it being full of happy like smiles, it's filled with misery. And that, to me, is a bigger indicator of more of the tone that this is setting. Not necessarily what time this is happening, not necessarily like the time and place or the lore implications of it. But I think what has happened is something far worse is coming from the change that has been made. And we know that there's some sort of link to what we're seeing here with Zack, as opposed to what the party's actions have been. So those two things are very clear to me. It's the actions that the party have taken and what Zack is seeing in his, the realm of his possibilities or whatever that is. So it's not the ending that we know anymore. It's leading to something else.
So
which ties in extremely nicely with, like, as obviously we've discussed many times, the level of Advent Children references in Chapter 18 alone is off the charts. Yeah, so this scene follows on from Chapter 18 of Remake. It doesn't follow on necessarily from Intermission, which means, technically speaking, if you watch this the way that Intergrade itself from, the Cloud and Co., like their actual true ending, this is the true ending. So we start at the beginning of Chapter 18, go through a shit ton of Advent Children references, and finally get to this, which, you're bang on that this is the exact inverse of great gospel comes down, makes all the children happy, everybody's having a great time, everybody's in the church, and then Zack leaves at the end into the sort of white light. Like, you're bang on. Like, it is the opposite of Advent Children, which suggests then that whatever happens in Zack's story might follow on, because, technically speaking, the way that the argument is from Chapter 18 is that we've changed the future that Kadaj, Laws, and Yuzu come from. So technically speaking, Advent Children might not exist anymore, but it might play out in Zack's storyline.
And there's more to suggest from that really quickly is that Yuffie's ending is a callback to On the Way to a Smile's beginning. So if that's another indication of like story, that's something to take away from it as well. Yeah,
there's quite a few nods to On the Way to a Smile in Yuffie's chapter as well. There's a couple of beauties that like what my personal favorite that comes out of On the Way to the Smile is that in that chapter when she goes back to Wutai, because Cloud gave her healing materia, she then goes about using that to heal the people that have been injured during the livestream eruption.
Yes.
And she does that in a hospital that's been set up, or in other words, a clinic. So when she starts Intermission, the only actual magic materia she has equipped is healing materia, and she meets Avalanche HQ in a building that's marked Sector 7 Clinic.
Yeah,
Yeah, I love this.
that's very cool. Okay, so like just I guess I can bring up some crack pottery since we're there. Things I've heard. Okay, things I've and I'll even tell you stuff that's gone through my head. When I very first saw it, I was incredibly sleep deprived and had no context because I rushed through the game so that I was allowed on the internet, so that I could help Sleepezi with technical issues. So I rushed through, watched it, and the first thing. Okay, so you mentioned the Materials Ultimania. Now, the express purpose of the church, why it was built, was to help people mourn the loss of people during Sector 6. The Sector 6 incident that caused it was a plate construction incident, or at least that's the official story.
I heard that zirconium.
Shut up. Seeing the in your actual translation, does it specify that Sector 6?
Yes, that's how it starts. Sector 6 platefall incident.
Right, and okay.
So,
okay, cool.
okay, I will finish my point now.
On Google
So
Translate. Sorry, okay.
I'll send that to you.
Yeah. So Sector 6. So it's possible. And I hadn't looked at the I had not looked at the NPC models and compared them to other NPC models yet. And I still would argue that it doesn't necessarily matter since they reuse NPCs so often. Is it, what if Zach walked into the past? What if Zach walked 30 years into the past? And what if Zach is ultimately responsible for the events that make the Terrier timeline become the Beagle timeline? That was the first thing I thought of, because we know that whatever divergent path caused the logo, the mascot, to be changed had to have happened a while back, right? It had to have happened before the destruction of the Whispers, for instance. So what if what we're about to witness, what if Zach's whole purpose is to tell a story about Zach that ultimately explains what the Whispers even were, why they were involved, and why the party is now in the Beagle timeline. So that was my first takeaway. The other thing that immediately flooded my brain, and a bunch of people on Twitter said, is, well, if this is the past, maybe he goes to Nibelheim looking for, answers. A few years pass, and he meets a youngly loved lady named Claudia, and they fall in love, etc. Right? So I've heard that.
So you've just come up with the Terminator theory.
Well, no, there's way gnarlier. There's a timeline loop in Netflix's Dark where a person becomes her own grandmother. So like, this is nothing compared to weird stuff we get.
The chat's loving it.
Chat's loving it. Okay, so I'm not saying that that's how it's happening. Just bear with me. Let's get through the rest of these theories. Okay, the other thing a lot of people note is that it could very well be that Zach just literally walked into the church at the same moment that Aerith is feeling knots in her stomach while it's raining, and that those people are there because of Platefall, and they're just sad. And, a counter argument to that is, well, we go into church after Platefall and only Kyrie is there. Well, this is a day later. It could have taken them a while to get relocated, etc.
Yeah,
so that's certainly a possibility.
It's certainly a possibility, except for the Buster Sword.
Well, no. So we're talking about Terrier Zach has now walked into Beagle the Beagle timeline.
I know I'm not on camera right now, but my eyes are rolling into the back of my head. Every conversation.
So basically, what's happening here is that there's a very brief divergence from the Terrier timeline that I get why that theory's there, but if he's actually in the Beagle timeline with the Buster Sword, it creates all sorts of fuckwittery.
Well, not if he's from the Terrier timeline. The Terrier timeline's fucked without Zack.
So how did they jump across?
I would assume something involving the Singularity, time nonsense, and Aerith.
Right. I think it's a separate timeline. I cards on the table. I definitely think it's a separate timeline.
Okay.
And they're using Stamp as a visual representation that
and
now.
They purposely remove Stamp from this area at all, so we can't really tell.
And I think the whole thing is that what they've done in Intermission is, in my mind anyway, they've confirmed that Beagle Stamp represents Cloud,
right?
Which means that Terrier Stamp represents Zack, which means that moving forward, if we get to play as Zack, anytime you see, or if you're moving around and they'll use Beagle Stamp and Terrier Stamp to identify
as
which
the Laguna method. Yeah.
What if he's been transported to? What if he's been transported to an alternate timeline where that Sephiroth created after the Whispers were gone? Since now he can, do whatever it is he wanted to do.
Well, that's what I thought was really cool. The idea of, if Sephiroth is in a position where he has an understanding of time and can materialize in different times, once the Whispers are gone, technically speaking, there's nothing to stop Sephiroth going back even further.
Mm-hmm. And in this timeline, Sephiroth killed everybody. He killed Cloud, he didn't kill Cloud, but Cloud's incapacitated. Got rid of Aerith, Tifa, Barret, everybody.
He turned Cloud is in his basement in a GIMP costume.
Technically speaking, if he goes back far enough, he can remove Jenova from the Northern Crater, in which case nobody gets a hold of Jenova except him.
Tell me more. Go on.
And in which case he can do it once. He could even go back to the point where the first meteor struck the planet and become a god that way, with or without his mother. Or what if the Cetran stories of the calamity arriving is not a calamity that came from the stars, but actually just Sephiroth time traveling?
Ooh.
I want to just very quickly piggyback off of that, because one of the things that you guys probably don't know about, and I'm sure some of you do in chat, but one of the original concepts for Sephiroth in the Nibelheim, or not the Nibelheim, in the Northern Crater, this is like OG like concept, is that what Sephiroth was when he was sitting in the crystal was a completely different being than what you see and know Sephiroth as now. Is that he actually adopts a feminine like appearance and body, and he's manifesting like dark entities, like a dark army essentially,
right?
And in that original concept. So what I'm not saying that I necessarily like see it exactly the way that MJ is saying it, just because I think that most of this is just fine to speculate about, but I'm not sure. As far as like how I feel about it. But I would say if that was a way to do that, I would be looking at it from the perspective of this is a OG concept being remade,
right?
In that regard,
right?
So
it's the Parasite Eve remake that we'll never get.
That's really what this is about for Nomura. Like,
just as a disclaimer, I don't genuinely believe
it's too late. I'm going to edit out you saying you don't believe it. I'm going to say this is your theory. So sorry.
Okay. So yeah, like I don't genuinely believe it. Sephiroth has traveled back in time to put a virus in, etc.
That would be sweet, though. As long as we could play that game.
But yeah, I mean, like obviously, I'm going to pull Euro trick of if that comes true, I want the credit.
That's fair. That's fair. Gun to my head, I mean, like, I really don't. I don't know what's happening. Like, and I don't think we're supposed to. If I were to just like take a wild guess, I would in fact go with the Laguna route. That we're, they're two separate timelines, and we're going to get little bits of Zack playable in part 2 in sort of a Laguna fashion. How it intersects with the overall narrative, I just don't see them overthinking it. I don't think them turning it into this like masterpiece, like a Christopher Nolan-esque masterpiece of timeline shenanigans. I think it's just gonna be something simple and understated.
I agree, but what it might kind of go back to Sleepezi's thing about drawing from very, very early concepts of Final Fantasy VII. One of the Sakaguchi's original concept was the story set in New York City, and the antagonist is a sorceress, which New York City eventually became Midgard. The sorceress was just sort of popped into Final Fantasy VIII, which Nojima also wrote.
Right.
So we might end up in a situation where Nojima has kind of drawn a wee bit of inspiration from the time compression idea, which there's, as I've kind of pointed out before, there's already references to that in the remake.
Well, a singularity is a literal compression of time.
Well, exactly.
Yeah.
And there's also, if you go to Don Corneo's stash at the scrapyard in Sector 5, you get the ruby tiara, which is the ruby weapon, but you also get the circlet. The circlet's described as a headdress worn by a fairy tale sorceress. And it looks like the circlet that's worn by Adair in Final Fantasy VIII. So there's a wee Easter egg for Final Fantasy VIII in there, which suggests that it's crossed their minds at some point. So there's maybe the time compression idea has trickled through somewhere, and they've tied it into Sakaguchi's original concept.
Interesting.
Again, disclaimer: that's not what I actually believe's happened. I'm just throwing it out there.
Unless it's real, and in which case you get.
Unless it's real, in which case, yes, I will share that with Blitz just because I'm nice like that.
Love you long time.
What do you?
So okay, ultimately, like beyond like wide sweeping analysis of like characters and what this all means and everything like this, gun to your head, Sleepezi. The fuck's going on?
I don't have. I hate to say this, and I really hope people don't take this the wrong way. I am so indifferent to this. I just genuinely don't even like have any part of my brain that has any thought of entertaining to see what this is about.
Okay, you put out one video that's 6 minutes long, and already you're a different person.
I've always been like this about Zack. I've always been about this,
or timeline stuff in general. It's not my. It's not for everyone, and but it also doesn't like need to ruin anything. Like,
I'm actually more open to the fact that I want them to just do whatever they want to do, and then just see what happens.
Okay, so that was the big point I thought was good about this. Is that like. Immediately when the game came out and they just teased the possibility of this, like the developers had the choice to look at criticism and go like, you know what, we can just pull back on that, but instead they're all like, nope, what this showed me is that nope, we're doing it, we got a plan, we're doing it, we don't give a shit, and I love that.
As soon as I saw the face in the trailer, I was like, they're drawing a line. I've said this over and over again. They drew a line for the audience, being like, this is the challenge that we're going to meet. We're going to meet this challenge. You hate this shit. We're going to bring it in and actually make it good. And we're going to prove to you that you're wrong about what we can do about this.
Yeah.
And I was like, you just walked forward onto a tightrope square, and if that's what you want to do, go for it. It's a risk, and that they didn't need to take at all. They didn't need to take this risk, and they just decided to make it that much of a tighter space to walk through for themselves by including Deep Ground as like a selling point for like your PS5 version of this game. And I genuinely think that they did everything that they needed to do right. So when I look at the Zack stuff, am I going to look at the Zack stuff and be like, well, that sounds like bullshit, when I just played a game that made Dirge Cerberus like more appealing to like a general audience? Like, what am I going to say to that? Like, I'm going to say, oh, I still don't trust you after you just like did like a fucking like 12 backflips and made Nero like the sickest boss fight I've ever fucking seen in the game so far? No, like I'm gonna sit here and wait to see what they fucking do. And anybody who like, I feel like just because I'm a theorist, people expect me to have like really heavy investment into the things that I say. I try and be as accurate as possible, but I am very willing to throw away anything that I've ever come up with to see what they want to do. And I am more curious about what they want to do than I want to imply or impose my vision onto what they're doing. So the Zack thing is what you would think most theorizers would want to discuss, because there's just a fucking wide variety of speculation to be had. The thing is that there is absolutely nothing concrete. Not a single thing. There are pieces, but there's nothing to imply what they're doing with that yet. Yeah. This is a little bit more simplified and a little bit more straightforward to just say, hey, we're not backing out of this choice. Like, don't like, I would just say, don't get your hopes up for this. Like, don't create this misconception of where this is going, because I can almost guarantee you, and I've been around for a long time and been a fan of like multiple movie series, that just bites you in the ass. So just enjoy the ride. I enjoyed this ride, and I want to get back on the next one that they give me. So that's where I am.
Yeah, I agree with Clark's point of view that I really appreciate the degree of conviction the Square Enix have shown. It's like having to carry about your balls in a wheelbarrow level of big balls. And I think that I've kind of spoken to you guys about this in the past, that Zack's, one, from a storytelling perspective, it was one of my favorite characters in the entire compilation because of the importance of his death in particular, or his sacrifice, more to the point, the impact that had on the story. So I was with a lot of people who were not comfortable with the fact that he was being resurrected at the end of Remake, irrespective of what the reason for that was. I wasn't comfortable with the fact that they were doing it. But now that I've had more than a year to process that they were doing it, I'm excited to see where they go. And I 100% agree with Sleepezi that there is nothing, I think a lot of people are unhappy about certain decisions that have been made in the storytelling of Remake. But I think, as a storyteller myself, that I can understand why those decisions have been made. And as a result of that, can appreciate why they were made.
Yes.
So you might not agree with them, or you might not certainly understand them at the beginning, but you can appreciate why they've been made. So, exactly as CPZ said, there's nothing that has actually come out of Remakes so far from a storytelling perspective that makes you think, yeah, this is really, really dodgy. I think you should stop right now, because everything they've done is proven that they can delve into a story, that they can tell a story that shocks and surprises and brings us to tears and all that. And as a result of that, and in particular, to coin the phrase, the Laguna theory of having sections of future Remake installments which switch to Zack and allow you to play as Zack. So it doesn't matter where the story goes. Like, see the sentimental value of that? Being able to run around Midgar as Zack and like I'm excited for that now. Now that I've made my peace with the fact that he's definitely alive, it makes me excited for seeing what they're going to do with that. And yeah, I love it. I think it's amazing, and I can't wait for the next part.
Agreed. Blitz, what are your thoughts?
I feel like they have said many times before they never wanted to remake this game or tackle remaking this game because they didn't want to fuck it up, and or unless they felt very comfortable and confident with the direction of how they're gonna, the process is gonna be to remake this. So seeing that, what their plan is, sort of, it's very ballsy. They have their confidence level is very high, and I absolutely love it. I want to see this direction. I want to see what happens. What's the result of all of this, and what at the end game, like, what is their end game? What are we going to be seeing that all this stuff leads up to, and how are we as fans of the original or new fans of the remake going to react to all this stuff? And it's like, really and truly, I hope they don't take the fan criticism and decide to sway away from whatever it is they want to do, and they backtrack essentially. I want them to go all in and go with the whatever idea it was they came up with in development. They were like, let's do this. We can do this properly. We can make the game that we always wanted to make, and see where that takes us. And I'm loving every single second of it, guys. I mean, obviously, I have some issues with length of certain characters being introduced, and not as much depth in certain areas, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's horrible to me.
Right.
Like it's still the overall aspect of the game was great, and the overall story of what we witnessed and all the stuff that we've been playing is really good to me. So all in all, I'm excited, I'm happy, and I'm very, very upset that we're gonna have to wait probably another year and a half until we get some more updates, because that last cutscene.
You say that E3 is tomorrow.
I wish I would love for it to be something they talk about at E3, but I just don't personally see it. I would love to be wrong, though. Hella love to be wrong, but I love seeing that interaction, with the party at that last cutscene. That last cutscene of them talking to each other like a bunch of friends on a road trip, just walking, and just the atmosphere of Tifa and Aerith, trying to hitchhike and being all hilarious. I love that, and just I can't wait to hear because I know Red 13 and Barrett are gonna have some really golden dialogue. So I'm just more than excited to see Remake Part 2, where it's we get to actually play in those events and see those moments, those character moments, and unique variety between them all. I'm hella excited, man. That's something that I wanted to see for a very long time, is these characters interacting with each other. Like we were talking about with Philip way back. It's not necessarily filler, right? It's character development. It's seeing these characters interact with each other and further their screen time, further their interactions with each other. I want to see that. I love that. That's why one of my favorite chapters is chapter 3, because we see a lot of that. We see a lot of that between Cloud, Tifa, and Cloud starts to warm up a little bit towards Biggs and Wedge, and get used to the idea of sticking around and being a part of not Avalanche per se, but hanging out and helping them out.
Right.
That is something that I love seeing, and I can't wait to see more of that. I really love that hitchhiking bit, though. That shit is so funny. Tifa just is grabs Aerith's arm. Aerith is doing it all wrong. She's like this. She's like, no, you gotta put the hand here. It's perfect. I love that type of stuff, and I can't wait to see it again in a full game aspect.
Fully agree. Yeah. Well, okay. I do have some questions here. Okay, so we'll take a few questions.
Just before we go on, I think I've got no more than 30 minutes left in me.
Wow.
Yeah, it's 1:30 a.m. here, so
thank you. Okay, so you guys hear it. 30 more minutes tops. Okay, so Venetia Silver asks, mine, is Minerva a potential final boss, as she is the jailer of the planet's will? She is the one who causes the Ragnaroks to happen. And Sephiroth knows the will of the planet is to destroy hope.
I will. Is that the end of the question? Because I could just answer that pretty quickly.
Yeah.
No, I don't think that she will be any sort of final confrontation. I think the point of those videos was to highlight that she's a function. It's like an extension of a function. So I think if she ever does show up, she will show up in a capacity that is not like the final entity. I think that no matter what Remake does, I think that, and this is, you know what, and I didn't say this during the Zack thing, but they seem to be keeping a lot of like the newer elements of these new scenes that we've just seen as like Zack is doing something different. Everything that we see the party doing is the same as what we know. We know that they get to come. We see Chocobo Bill, like all of those things. I think that they're making that very clear to say that like we will. The game hasn't shifted focus. Like Sephiroth is still the ultimate villain of this story, and he's the thing that ultimately like the characters need to confront. So I think that as much as I would like to see Minerva as like be even a larger part of the story than we know her as only like a secret boss, which is very bound to happen now that we've seen that demonstrated with Vice and Nero, it's not likely that Square would make the decision to make this really obscure character into the forefront character of the conflict of the story. You have weapons for that too, and she's already associated with those things. So like that's just a story that you could totally just like my dream secret boss fight where Minerva uses literally all of the weapons as like a fight, and that's it. Just like that's all I want from her, and then something that hints at her presence and her involvement to a degree, but it's not a forefront story element, I think, at this point.
Okay. I would agree with that. I think there's going to be some like a kind of secret Cavern of Wonders type idea from Crisis Core, where probably Zack it'll likely occur in Zack's storyline. You know, the Minerva's referenced in some way. That she'll maybe sort of present herself to Zack and tease him sort of deeper into the cave or whatever, just to sort of do battle with him. And as soon as Zack defeats her, I think she's going to press a button on her leg and activate Genesis.
Yeah,
the way that Scarlet does with Deep Ground, like just shot for shot, exactly what Scarlet does.
You know, in the next game, I want her to click like 5 different buttons on her. Like she goes to her wrists, she goes to the back of her neck. She's got one on the back of her neck. She goes to the bottom of her like shoe or something.
Or she press. What is it? Is it her chest or is it the circlet in her head?
Exactly.
She just presses a button on her head.
Yeah,
Genesis activates.
She's playing like what do you call it? Bop it with like just different parts of her body, hitting all these buttons. All of this gets just launch out. Anyway, sorry, I just wanted to get.
No, that's good. I'm glad we broke the tension a little bit. Okay, so Complex says, if Aerith isn't dead, then what is the significance of the wilting flowers? You can see them in the background of the stream. I don't see them as wilting as I think some people have sort of suggested they are. It seems like just more like the way that a different rendering company might render those flowers. But let's say they are wilting. It doesn't necessarily mean she's dead. It could just mean that she's gone. Like she's no longer at the church to help cultivate them and keep them there.
Exactly. That kind of it ties into. I had this conversation with a couple of people on Twitter recently, where my understanding had always been that the reason the flowers were blooming in the church is because of Aerith's presence. But it turns out that's not correct. That Aerith's presence did help. But Toriyama actually came out and quite clearly said, and specifically to the remake or maybe the wider compilation, that the river that runs past Aerith's house carries elements of the live stream, which helps the flowers around the house to grow, but also the same river runs past the church, which helps the flowers in the church to grow. So we're now in a situation where at the end of chapter 18, you've effectively, or the way that the story is being told, that you've significantly affected the way that the planet is functioning, which would then suggest that the live stream might be affected, in which case the river that takes the live stream to the flowers would be affected. So straight away, it would then imply that if that live stream was helping the flowers to grow, that the wilting of the flowers might relate to the live stream rather than actually apply to Aerith.
And another thing to note is that we know that the live stream can actually move from different location to other location, because in On the Way to a Smile episode Barrett, it moves away from the big cities. The Mako does. Like there's a direct, and so it's possible something like that is happening.
Yeah, it's a redistribution. It says that the Mako reactors sort of affected the flow. So the explosion or the live stream eruption at the end of Final Fantasy VII effectively disabled the pull of the reactors. So when the live stream went back into the planet, it redistributed itself a bit more evenly, which is why there's less in Midgar and more in anywhere else.
There you go.
Sort of
I'm
like
sold.
Northern Crater. People are familiar with that. It's the wound of the planet gathering Mako, which kills everything outside of it. So it's the same concept for Midgar, except it's being done just through machines rather than the planet's sort of like focus on healing a wound. So
That's deep. That's deep.
Yeah, that's not. It's the lore of Final Fantasy VII actually doesn't fuck around too much, which it's surprising that something so fantastical actually can stand on two legs when you put it all together. I think that's probably what makes it so interesting to pick at is that it seems almost like there's an unwritten rule book in the background, sort of allowing and disallowing certain actions to be taken with the games, even when they go like completely off the rails.
Yeah.
I never really recognized that until like right now, but that's like, I think the structure of the universe is actually pretty solid. I will say that just very quickly, the water thing, I think that goes back to the Advent Children in reverse sort of comment with the flowers is that what is filling the church is misery, and that is geostigma to a T. So whether or not there is that sort of like presence of wilting flowers or anything like that, I think the point is to reflect what those things might represent outside of the flowers. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to be just represented in like wilting flowers. It's
more metaphorical than literal.
Right. So I think just viewing it from that point, the idea of what you're going for is still made, right? But just looking at it from the context of like the emotional half resonating into the thematic is that rather than smiling faces, you have unhappy faces. And will that materialize in the form of water or geostigma or whatever? Is that necessarily needed for the story? Who knows? And that will be a decision that they can make later. But they're definitely trying to get the same point across to a degree. It's just not clear what that point is leading to right now. So.
Yeah.
It's a good question.
It definitely is. And okay, so we got through those questions fairly quickly, but so we'll just do two more. One, IT Birdman is he's asked a couple times now, and it's about the ending. Is it implied that people are able to sense each other through rain? Aerith is able to sense Zack when he dies in Crisis Core in Part 1 and the DLC, and every time it rains in these situations. Marlene also senses Barrett's presence in the ending through water drop that falls on the flower. What do you guys think about this? I think it's a good point. I think water is definitely like thematically important. In terms of like mechanics, I don't want to like rest any theories on the mechanics of it, because I think a lot of times it's water, the life stream. It's more of like these kind of vague symbolic lines. But I definitely think the symbology or the symbolism is very there. It's very for sure there. Yeah. It is supposed to represent some kind of transfer of information, but nothing that I would say you could, like make a determination based on. Ripples
There's-
on the
there's
water
the-
surface. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the whole idea originated in Advent Children, because quite a number of the times where Aerith communicates with Cloud,
Mm-hmm.
and with Marlene as well. The point raised there about when it starts to rain and Edge, Marlene turns round and says, "Is it her?" i.e., is it Aerith? There's a couple of Cloud. I'm visualizing something in my mind. I could be wrong about this, but I think when Cloud splashes through a puddle when he's driving Fenrir and the Forgotten, or towards the Forgotten capital, he has a vision of Aerith, and then when he drops his phone, the phone falls in the puddle, and he has there's a sort of Aerith monologue while the phone's floating to the bottom or sinking to the bottom of the puddle, and obviously the whole Great Gospel connection. At the church when it starts to rain and she calls back Kadaj. So there's an enormous amount of connection between Aerith and water. And I don't want to be too morbid about it, but it might be that the reason there's a connection with water is because of where her body is.
Right.
Yeah, that's a really serious turn there, didn't it?
Yeah.
That's a bit morbid, yeah, but I like it. I'm here for it.
I think it's about the growth of, I see where you're coming from with that, but I think it's the same as the live stream, because in Advent Children it's also the same thing where it's like water then plants, and it's that same level layering that Advent Children does. In the fact that there's the plants, there's the flowers, and then underneath that is the water, and then underneath that, as we know from other areas in the OG, there's the live stream. So it's she's there, and you're meeting her here somewhere in the space between almost. I think it's really awkward that they use that raining scene again, because it starts raining at the end of Remake.
Right.
And then it starts raining again, and the lighting's the same. It's like it was a day, right? They say that how long does it take to get there? Sort of.
Yeah, it's the thunderstorm though that creates the difference.
Right, and it's just weird to me. But I think the stomach and knots is separate. I think.
Well, I would disagree. Actually, I would say the stomach and knots is actually through the rain. She's sensing what's going on with Zach. I think that's where the argument is.
Yeah.
That we get to see Zach because Aerith is imagining this the same way that she saw Zach and Cloud walking past because the rain started at the end of actual Remake.
Yeah.
So sorry to jump in there.
Just with the white background, I guess, in Zach's scene, because that's also the same way that we see Aerith seeing Zach in Remake, or sensing him. I don't necessarily. I guess what I'm trying to say is that it could be that, but I think what the developers are really trying to carry on here is that they're repeating this scene to re-illustrate what we already know of Aerith from the end of Remake. Like they're saying is that what you're taking away from this is not a coincidence. Like Aerith is hesitant. Aerith is not feeling good about what she's done. Like those things I think are being constantly reiterated throughout this ending, which I think is really important coming from my perspective, because I feel like people have been interpreting this that way or the other. I think what they needed to do is be like, here's two examples of the same scene, and they're both playing out the same. I think that's mainly the target of what that is. But I could totally see what you're saying, Mo, and have it be true. Like I don't. I agree with what you said. I don't think either of us are. I don't think the two things are exclusive. I do agree that Aerith is effectively voicing this boundless, terrifying freedom of what the player might be feeling about moving forward. That her stomach is in knots because we don't know what's going to happen, and they have actually made significant changes. So I think it's deliberate that it's reflective, or it's both literal and metaphorical. That it's reflective of how the player is feeling about what happens next, but also it's a segue into
what's happening with Zach. So I don't think, you know, I'm right and you're wrong, or you're right and I'm wrong. I think actually both are true.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, as much as I can agree. I mean, I think a lot of this stuff could end up being
yes.
Yeah, yeah.
But Aerith was fine, and only when it started to rain. No, she's unsure before that too. She doesn't know what's going on. That's like the very first thing that she gets asked
in the original remake ending. Too, she's uncertain the whole time.
Tifa literally looks over to her and is like, "Well, now what, Aerith? Like, you're the one who's like sort of been sure about, or at least able to kind of anticipate what's happening." And then she just shakes her head. She's like, "I have no idea what's about to happen."
Yeah, like, what do you want from me?
I don't know what's happening anymore. So I think she's the thing about Aerith. And this is why I like her character, because a lot of it is a Deus Ex in terms of like her role in Remake and OG, and like she's just a direct fine line to the planet and a very important story part of that like explanation of like the planet's function. In this, you can just tell right below the surface of everything that she's doing that there's absolutely something wrong at any given moment, no matter how cheerful she's being or polite she's being. Like she's not okay.
Yeah.
She's not okay with what's been going on, and she just can't say anything. And the game even tells us that she can't. Like there's something physically stopping her from doing that. And that's super important. And it's the same thing with Tifa. Tifa also keeps things like really bottled up, or she does that because she's restricting herself, which defines, I guess, a difference between the two characters. Is that Aerith seems like sort of mysterious, but that's only because she kind of has to be, and it's her way of adapting to the pressure of what's going on. Is she's being lighthearted because her life has been like constant in this direction, and she's had to like cope with that and deal with that, and this is how she is on the surface, but that's not who she is as a character fundamentally. I think she, like, you even see it in Cosmo Canyon in the original, where she feels very isolated by the time you get to Cosmo Canyon. She doesn't even want to talk to Cloud because she just doesn't think anybody's going to understand what's happening with her. And that's huge. That's a huge part of her character. So I think that to say surface level wise that she feels okay at that ending scene is a little bit not the mark there.
Yeah,
fair.
It's
Well, okay. Let's see. Last question is about will we see the real Calm? Calm was destroyed a long time ago, as Nibelheim and Shinra people in it, according to Before Crisis, as it was Veld's hometown. Well, I think we might get reference to the fact that happened somehow.
Yeah.
In Remake.
Did it looked like in Remake it had like a castle kind of setup, like it had like high walls and like different structures than like, you know, I expected it to have. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So maybe they reinforced it.
Is that a castle joke? Like there is concept artwork from Dirge of Cerberus that shows Calm and the sort of layout of it and the size of it and all this sort of stuff. It does kind of, from the distance, it looks like as if they've actually changed the landscape quite a wee bit. But I agree with Clark. I think this would be a very, very good place to introduce the concept of Shinra rebuilding a town, like just very, very subtly, because obviously in order to understand that Calm was rebuilt, you have to know about Dirge of Cerberus, but Dirge of Cerberus was never released outside of Japan, so you know the references have to be at the same sort of level as what was going on in Intermission about Yuffie sort of making sort of passing references to her history with Avalanche. But in particular, you know, we've had the discussion about, you know, a very good story arc for the next section I don't know whether or not we'll make it that far, but a very good story arc for the next session would be to start with the Nibelheim flashback, go through all of that, and then finish the game, returning to Nibelheim where it's been rebuilt. But if you're in a situation where the Nibelheim flashback is being retold in Calm, there's no better a place to lay the groundwork or kind of plant the seeds of, well, if a town gets destroyed, this is what Shinra do. So it actually ties in very, very nicely with the location where the the Nibelheim flashback takes place. So I fully expect that there will be at least one full chapter set in Calm where, exactly the same as chapter 1 of Intermission, where the first half of it will be side quests and lore stuff if you want to do that. Then the second half will be learning how the world map works.
Mm-hmm. Remember in Calm, the residents too were all kind of like, I wouldn't say brainwashed, but they were very unaware of like the evil things that Shinra does.
Very, very pro Shinra.
Like they're like, because I remember recently playing it, and you talk to each one, and they're like, Shinra's doing a really good job with like the energy and like making sure everybody has a chance to have Mako. Wouldn't you agree? And you have a chance, you could agree with them, or you could like deny it, like with them, and be like, you guys are like you're full of shit. Like you don't know what the hell they're actually doing, like that type of thing. So it's gonna be cool to see like if if Shinra has an influence in like Calm like that, how it plays out with the residents, like dialogue and the party interacting with them. So I'm hella looking forward to that first chapter.
Yeah. And also, just as a sort of personal interest, I'd like them to expand a little bit on the Mithril mine getting closed down by monsters side of things.
I'm sure that there's a perfect side quest like lined up just for that.
Yeah. And even whether or not that would tie in with the bombing, that the mine wasn't closed because of monsters, it was actually closed because all the miners were killed.
Only the exciting death stuff. Only misery comes from these side stories.
Yeah, they're basically the near quests. Like
to be clear, though, they kind of set up for that darker tone with this game too, which I don't think we've really talked about a little bit. We've talked about like the creepiness of Nero, but like definitely the evolution of this game is sort of indicating that. And Calm is not a place to shy away from that either. So I think you're absolutely right, MJ. There will be a lot of that stuff to explore.
Okay.
Agreed.
And on that note, I'm probably going to have to call it a night.
As do we. So, okay, guys, thank you so much for being here. When I get the VOD up, there will be links to everybody here's channel. So I need all of you to subscribe to every last one of them, hit the little notification bell, everything. And so right now, I just want to say thank you to my guest, Blitz. You're always just awesome. And it's been really awesome kind of like experiencing the difficulty of Intermission with you, alongside you. I've been like watching you while playing and vice versa. Yeah. It's been really fun. Sleepezi has been quite the journey to go through all of this with you. And I'm really excited to have you on here, Mo. You presented so much cool information, and you always do. I'm really looking forward to, more than anything else you've done yet, your video breakdowns of Intermission. So
thank you.
Everybody, please tune into that. And so now, what we're gonna do is we're gonna raid Susie Jung's Twitch. She is currently playing Intergrade. She is the voice actress for Yuffie. So let's all show her as much love as you all show me. I love you guys very much, and I will see you again shortly. I'll be probably streaming a little bit of Intermission later tonight. Thank you guys so much.
Have a good night, guys.
Later, guys.
So let's get all 100 of you.
Everyone.
Oh, God, everybody's here. We're going. Bye.
Let's do it. I'm going to wait a little bit longer. We're at 59. Let's get more. Come on, guys. I bet 40 of you are already there. Okay, let's do it. Raid.
Ready, set, raid.
Yeah.